Chapter 431. No matter how hard Gumoyuan struggled, he was unable to resist. The thousand-hand sword Buddha's attack was so fierce that he almost couldn't catch his breath. He could already foresee how the spectators in the sky would talk about him. He wished he could commit suicide on the spot. But he really couldn't accept it. He didn't want to die. He was the descendant of the demonic emperor bloodline, and he still had much to show. He gritted his teeth and said, I'll pay. Zhou Xuanji's sword technique was exquisite, and his divine ability was quite strange. It was the first time he had encountered such an enemy. Damn it. He would definitely take revenge in the future. Zhou Xuanji stopped and laughed coldly, still not going to hand it over? Gumoyuan immediately threw out earth core crystals, and Zhou Xuanji received them one by one. A half-bridge made of geocentric flame crystals appeared between the two. Geocentric crystals came one after another, and Zhou Xuanji's expression changed slightly. How many people did this kid rob? Within the demonic shadow, Gumoyuan's expression was incomparably ugly. These were his painstaking efforts. After a while, Gumoyuan no longer threw out more earth core crystals. He threw Zhou Xuanji a total of 2,231 earth core crystals. Zhou Xuanji took out the truth sword and stabbed it into his body. Anything else? Yes. Gumoyuan's eyes widened in shock. Therefore, he threw out another 3,000 geocentric flame crystals. Zhou Xuanji was speechless. This guy was really rich. He continued to interrogate her. Gumoyuan threw out another 1,000 geocentric crystals. After another round of interrogation, he tossed out another 2,000 geocentric crystals. Gumoyuan was about to cry. Why couldn't he restrain himself from telling the truth? He looked at the truth sword with fear in his eyes. The outside world was in an uproar. A sword that could force people to tell the truth? Even someone as strong as Gumoyuan couldn't resist? Finally, Zhou Xuanji obtained more than 13,600 earth core crystals from Gumoyuan. He only let go after making sure that Gumoyuan did not have any left. Gumoyuan stood up with a complicated expression. His eyes were filled with anger and resentment. Zhou Xuanji could not bear to see this and comforted him. Don't blame yourself. It's mainly because I'm too powerful. You are not my match. Puff, Gumoyuan couldn't bear this injustice. He spat out a mouthful of blood, which splattered all over the rubble. Zhou Xuanji smiled and waved his hand before leaving. Gumoyuan sat paralyzed on the ground. The magic power in his body had already been exhausted. He was trying his best to calm himself down. As Zhou Xuanji left, he began to regain his rationality. Jishen of the Divine Cliff. If I don't take revenge for this, I'm not human. He gritted his teeth. He could not bear the thought of countless people mocking him in the outside world. Fortunately, he still had a chance. That bitch was stupid, she actually let him go. Just you wait, the winner of this Ascender assessment will be me. He clenched his fists and said firmly. On the other side, Zhou Xuanji continued to descend. After torturing Gumoyuan, he was in a good mood. He finally had a clear understanding of his own strength. It should not be a problem for him to sweep across all golden immortals. Mo Yuha was definitely stronger, but if he used all his trump cards, it was not impossible for him to win. He hummed a tune as he flew quickly. Another 5 days passed in the blink of an eye. Zhou Xuanji's earth core crystals exceeded 20,000. There were only a few freaks like Gumoyuan. However, he had yet to meet Mo Yuha, so he wasn't sure if he had the most geocentric flame crystals. Until today, the number of ascenders had decreased drastically. It was difficult for Zhou Xuanji to encounter any more ascenders. He scanned with his divine sense and realized that his divine sense could only reach 1,000 meters away. It seemed like the mysterious tribulation crater was not as simple as it seemed. There was something blocking divine sense. Zhou Xuanji stopped and looked down. He saw a vast ocean of lava below him. The fiery light shone on the cave walls, which was extremely majestic. A scorching aura wafted toward him. If an ordinary person were to get close, they would be turned into ashes. Countless bubbles rose and fell on the magma ocean, bursting from time to time. Zhou Xuanji looked around and saw countless geocentric flame crystals floating on the ocean. However, with his cultivation, he did not dare to get close. Far away, someone was flying swiftly and continuously plucking geocentric flame crystals from the surface of the lava ocean. Zhou Xuanji stared at him and sized him up. This person wore a dark purple robe and a jade crown. 2 strands of white hair fell down his cheeks, and his handsome face was covered in sweat. Powerful cultivation. Zhou Xuanji could not see through him but felt that this person was more powerful than Gumoyuan. There was only one possibility. Mo Yuha. Zhou Xuanji squinted his eyes and thought about whether he should attack Mo Yuha. He was not afraid of Mo Yuha but only wanted to maximize his benefits. Forget it. Let him collect for a while. Zhou Xuanji lay down on the ground and began to rest while absorbing the spiritual qi underground. Time ticked by. There were more than 10 cultivators who ascended above the lava ocean. They were 10,000 meters apart from each other and did not disturb each other. They were all thinking of ways to pluck geocentric flame crystals. Only Zhou Xuanji did not move. Even so, most people's attention was focused on him. A first-class great emperor was too much of a gimmick. Even Mo Yuha could not compete with him. That guy is trying to reap the benefits. He doesn't even take Mo Yuha seriously? He's too arrogant. He's a first-class great emperor. Didn't you see that Gu Moyuan was like a dog in his hands? Shu, be careful not to be heard. If that's the case, he might be the final winner? No, I think he will die from his arrogance. Hearing the discussions of the others, Sovereign Demon Sect's Guanhong and the Buddha Ghost Sect's people were furious. Especially the Buddha Ghost Sect, who wanted to tear Zhou Xuanji into pieces. Gu Moyuan was defeated so miserably before him that they could not wait to leave. Guanhong was worried about Mo Yuha. He heard about Zhou Xuanji. The Sovereign Demon Sect's sect lord once said that it would be great if he could rope Zhou Xuanji in. This was enough to show how ridiculously talented Zhou Xuanji was. He did not want Mo Yuha to lose. After all, he was assisting Mo Yuha and hoped that Mo Yuha could inherit the sect lord's position in the future. Emissary Li Qing was definitely the one who was in the most pleasant mood. When others came to strike up a conversation with him, his nostrils flared up. On the Heavenly Hall's side, an old man flew to Sei Jutian's side and said telepathically, "Your Majesty, the news has been leaked." Sei Jutian nodded and mumbled, "This emperor does not want to attack you either. If this gets out, the Heavenly Hall will not get involved in this anymore." Although he did not like Zhou Xuanji, he hated how those powerful cultivators oppressed the Heavenly Hall and used it as a tool. Now that Zhou Xuanji had ascended and disappeared in the northern wilderness region, it was the best time for the Heavenly Hall to retreat. He began to look forward to it suddenly. Facing the encirclement of so many powerful cultivators, what would the divine cliff do? In the Taoist temple at the top of the sky, Li Zhangqi came up to Taichi Yudao again and said respectfully, "Senior apprentice brother, the Heavenly Hall really spread the news about Zhou Xuanji. Next, the Dao Heaven sect will become the center of the storm." He was filled with disdain toward the Heavenly Hall. Since ancient times, many geniuses were born in the northern wilderness region. But it was a pity that the Heavenly Hall could not keep them. The biggest reason was that Sei Jutian was not powerful enough. He could never reach the peak. With his back facing Li Zhangqi, Taichi Yudao smiled and said, "It's okay. Let them come." Chapter 432. Zhou Xuanji did not know that his identity had been exposed, and a large number of enemies were on their way. He lay on the stone pillar, quietly waiting for time to pass. In the blink of an eye, there were only 5 days left until the end of the Ascender assessment. Zhou Xuanji had already made a name for himself in the mysterious tribulation crater. After all, he did not kill anyone but only robbed other Ascenders. The news of him robbing Gu Moyuan spread like wildfire, causing him to stand shoulder to shoulder with Mo Yuha. All the Ascenders were looking forward to the battle between him and Mo Yuha. It would be best if the two strongest experts perished together. However, Zhou Xuanji and Demon Desire River minded their own business and did not attack each other. This was especially so for Zhou Xuanji, who just lay there without moving. The Ascenders all understood his intentions. This bastard wanted to rob the other Ascenders of their geocentric crystals. Wu Mingyi and a group of Divine Cliff disciples gathered near Zhou Xuanji. Today the Divine Cliff only had 9 people left. They could only rely on Zhou Xuanji's might to survive. Zhou Xuanji had long since noticed their approach, but he did not mind. Gu Moyuan did not attack the other Ascenders. He was also frantically plundering the geocentric flame crystals. The magma sea was incomparably silent, and the atmosphere was heavy. Everyone was vigilant of their surroundings. If he was careless and was shot down, he would die without a burial. There were already some pitiful creatures who fell down before, and not even a trace of their soul was left. On the 4th last day, Gu Moyuan could no longer sit still, and he began to slaughter the Ascenders. Who wouldn't want to fight a little longer if they could survive until today? As a result, many Ascenders died tragically because they didn't even have the time to take out their identity tokens. On the 3rd last day, there were less than 200 Ascenders left in the profound tribulation crater. Most of them were hiding underground, not daring to approach the magma ocean. In the outside world, Many of the eliminated ascenders returned to their respective sects dejectedly. Although they wanted to leave, they had no choice but to give the Tao Heaven sect face. They gritted their teeth and continued to watch. At the same time, they also wanted to know who would win. On this day, Mo Yuha also began to attack the other ascendants. He and Gu Moyuan turned into cruel hunters and chased after the ascenders. Zhou Xuanji was already motionless. He did not go down to plunder the earth core crystal but just laid there as though he was sleeping. Even though there was no one on the surface of the magma sea, he did not move. Everyone knew what he was trying to do. The more he thought so, the more he looked forward to it. Was a grade 1 great emperor really that powerful? A mere 5th Revolution Golden Immortal could be invincible among Heavenly Revolution Golden Immortals? The second last day, Mo Yuha returned to the surface of the lava and stopped on a stone pillar. From here he could see Zhou Xuanji. The two of them were less than a kilometer apart. This distance was already very close for them. The corners of Mo Yuha's mouth curled upwards, revealing a disdainful smile as he sat down cross-legged. He did not know Zhou Xuanji's true identity, but he knew that this person had defeated Gu Moyuan, so he was not in a hurry to act. Because he didn't even put Gu Moyuan in his eyes. Zhou Xuanji sent a telepathic message to Wu Mingyi and the others, advising them to stay far away. It would be best if they could crush their identity medallions now. Apart from these people, the other ascenders were all 7th Revolution Golden Immortals and above. Zhou Xuanji was very curious. It had only been 500 years since they ascended, so how did they reach such a stage? One thing was very clear: these ascenders were all from the major forces. With Zhou Xuanji's reminder, the other Divine Cliff disciples decided to retreat as a group. They flew close to the ground and waited for the exam to end. However, they had forgotten that Gu Moyuan was still up there. On the magma sea, only Zhou Xuanji and Mo Yuha were left. Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes and asked, "Hey, how many earth core crystals do you have?" "I have 20,000. Mo Yuha glanced at him and said indifferently, "Just a little more than 1,000,000. "A little more than 1,000,000. Zhou Xuanji smiled. What a fat sheep. Seeing his smile, the outside world was in an uproar. This first-class great emperor was really arrogant. How powerful was he to be so unbridled? Guanhong frowned tightly. The more she looked at Zhou Xuanji, the more displeased she was. Sei Juqian was silent, but his eyes were filled with complicated emotions. If Zhou Xuanji could be used by the Heavenly Hall, perhaps the Heavenly Hall could soar. Li Zhangqi stood beside emissary Li Qing and chatted cheerfully with him about Zhou Xuanji. The other forces cursed in their hearts. What right did this guy have to become an elder of the Tao Heaven sect? He was too shameless. When Zhou Xuanji gets first place and becomes a 10th Revolution Golden Immortal 10 years later, you will have one more Void Extreme Immortal. How enviable! Li Zhangqi chuckled as though he was a good brother to emissary Li Qing. Han Shuzi sent emissary Li Qing to lead Zhou Xuanji, which meant that the two of them had a good relationship. Li Zhangqi naturally wanted to rope emissary Li Qing in. Emissary Li Qing shook his head and smiled humbly. But he enjoyed it in his heart. Continue to brag. Don't stop. Time continued to pass. The last day. Zhou Xuanji stood up slowly and everyone on the clouds quieted down. The final battle was finally here. Zhou Xuanji and Mo Yuha were definitely the most powerful two in this year's Ascender examination. The Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss and the 9 Flame Chimera Demon Sword appeared in Zhou Xuanji's hands. Numerous legendary swords appeared around him one after another. Activating their divine energy, the swords shone brilliantly. The surface of his body quickly turned golden and was surrounded by heavenly lightning. A purple Tai Chi diagram with 9 swords appeared on his forehead. Boom! The surrounding cavern walls shook violently, and even the lava lake rippled. Mo Yuha opened his eyes in surprise. He knew that Zhou Xuanji was powerful, but he did not expect his aura to be so powerful. Was this guy really a 5th Revolution Golden Immortal? He got up and unleashed his own aura. The two completely different auras clashed, and the impact caused the inverted stone spikes to fall down. Zhou Xuanji smiled lightly and said, "If I defeat you, I will have more than 1,000,000 pieces." Easy. Mo Yuha raised his right hand, and a blood-red halberd appeared in his hand. A layer of black armor covered his robe, and his aura grew tremendously like a demon god. Easy? I will let you die. Mo Yuha stared at Zhou Xuanji and said with a smile. His smile was filled with murderous intent. Their eyes met, and both of them looked equally conceited. Boom. The two attacked almost at the same time, and the stone pillar under their feet crumbled instantly. Clang. The sword and halberd clashed. Zhou Xuanji swung both swords at the same time with extreme speed. Mo Yuha held the halberd with both hands, and his speed was just as fast as Zhou Xuanji's. Numerous legendary swords flew toward Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji activated the 10,000 Sword Dragon incantation straightaway and controlled hundreds of legendary swords to attack Mo Yuha. He then activated the Emperor's Wei Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha and gathered the power of the heavens and earth. A golden Buddha that was hundreds of meters tall appeared quickly, and he entered it. Mo Yuha frowned. He could sense that Zhou Xuanji's magic energy and strength had grown tremendously. He did not panic. A wave of demonic qi exploded from his body and turned into countless tentacles to defend against the legendary swords around him. His eyes turned red. He held the halberd with both hands and thrust it forward with all his might. The demonic qi transformed into a black dragon and wrapped around the halberd. The dragon clashed with the Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha and pushed it back. Chapter 433. The Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha spread its 1,000 arms, each holding a sword, and slashed at Mo Yuha. More than 100 divine swords surrounded Mo Yuha with dragon-shaped sword qi. At first glance, it seemed like an army was surrounding Mo Yuha, their auras powerful and tyrannical. Although Mo Yuha was being suppressed, he still had the strength to defend. Compared to Gumoyuan, Mo Yuha was more than 10 times stronger. Zhou Xuanji tightly frowned. If he observed closely, he would find that the Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha was showing signs of collapsing. This fellow's demonic aura is so strong. At this rate, the Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha would explode before he could harm Mo Yuha. He cursed in his heart. Was this guy wearing a reverse armor? He immediately dispelled the Emperor's Wei Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha. Following that, he unleashed the ancestral dragon divine sword and turned it into a 5-clawed golden dragon. An earth-shaking explosion resounded. The unstoppable 5-clawed golden dragon swallowed Mo Yuha in one gulp and rushed along the surface of the lava, setting off 2 waves of scorching heat. Mo Yuha gritted his teeth in the mouth of the 5-clawed golden dragon. He looked around in surprise and found that the 5-clawed golden dragon was formed from sword qi. What a mighty sword technique! At this moment, a sword light shot out from the 5-clawed golden dragon's body. It was Zhou Xuanji. His understanding of the ancestral dragon sword had reached its peak. While stabilizing the ancestral dragon, he could launch another attack on the enemy. The 9 sword souls appeared behind him, and he quickly rushed to Mo Yuha's side. His 2 swords danced in unison, and the sword souls attacked one after another. Mo Yuha was proficient in some kind of powerful halberd technique, which was extremely domineering. He blocked all of Zhou Xuanji's attacks. Although he looked calm, he was complaining in his heart. The web between his thumb and forefinger had already been torn, and it was extremely painful. Most importantly, he was using some kind of secret technique that allowed him to maintain his strongest state, which would speed up the consumption of magic power. Even so, he could only fight Zhou Xuanji to a draw. He couldn't understand. How could a 5th Revolution Golden Immortal have such strength? They did not know that Zhou Xuanji had 2 god-slaying legendary swords in his hands, and he had the power of the heavens and the earth as well as the Tianxia map. With all sorts of great serendipity gathered on him, how could he not be powerful? The 5-clawed golden dragon broke through the cave wall and wreaked havoc underground. The outside world was already in an uproar. Zhou Xuanji can really fight evenly with Mo Yuha. What sort of technique is that? He's too strong. If he were to become a real god, how powerful would he be? Mo Yuha has the potential to become the next sect master of the Sovereign Devil sect. Why do I feel that he has become mediocre? It's not that his talent is mediocre. It's that Zhou Xuanji is too powerful. The divine cliff has picked up a treasure. The various factions were all discussing this, and even the Tao Heaven sect's disciples were gasping in shock. Especially the female disciples, their eyes were shining like stars. Zhou Xuanji was handsome and had extraordinary talent. Which woman could resist his charm? Emissary Li Qing smiled and sighed in his heart. A first-class great emperor was indeed extremely powerful. No wonder Zhou Xuanji was ranked 12th on the Great Emperor Stele. The top 20 were all indomitable geniuses. The Tao Heaven sect master Taichu Yudao was only ranked 18th. Even when he was 18, he had once been the strongest in the Center God province. It was hard to imagine what heights Zhou Xuanji would reach in the future. In the Taoist temple, Taichu Yudao sat on a cattail hassock and looked at the sky outside. He stroked his long beard and smiled like a kind grandpa, without the aura of a powerful cultivator. He laughed softly and said, "The world Buddha art and Tianxia map are indeed worthy. No wonder Divine Lord Ji wanted them so much." His eyes were immersed in reminiscence as he mumbled, "Little brother, You are indeed talented to create such a creation. You should not die, and I will not let the tragedy of your past happen again. Zhou Xuanji and Mo Yuha's battle was reflected in his eyes, and they looked so tiny. Boom, boom, boom. The five-clawed golden dragon dashed underground while Zhou Xuanji and Mo Yuha fought intensely inside the dragon's body. Mo Yuha realized that his magic energy was being sucked away by his opponent. No, I must leave this place. Mo Yuha gritted his teeth. With a sway of his body, he disappeared and came to the head of the five-clawed golden dragon. He raised his halberd and smashed it down. Bomb! The 1,000 meters long five-clawed golden dragon exploded immediately and turned into countless sparks. Sword lights flashed and two sword souls shot toward Mo Yuha. Mo Yuha blocked instinctively, but his face was still cut open. Blood spurted out and his jade crown fell off. His white hair was disheveled. His eyes turned cold and sharp, and a murderous intent burst forth from him. Zhou Xuanji had really angered him. He raised his halberd high, and demonic chi gathered above his head like a sea of clouds. As the halberd swung down, countless vengeful demons charged out from the demonic sea of clouds and charged toward Zhou Xuanji with unstoppable force. Zhou Xuanji smiled with disdain. He raised the Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss and summoned it. With the Extreme Abyss summoned, countless evil spirits charged out and clashed with Mo Yuha's vengeful demon army. Boom! The underground mountain wall far away shattered suddenly, and Gu Moyuan charged over with his saber. A maniacal smile appeared on his face as he targeted Zhou Xuanji first. He was extremely fast. Like a ray of blood-red light, he could not be seen with the naked eye. Zhou Xuanji slashed back. Sky-dominating divine sword soul. Gu Moyuan could only sense an unstoppable force crashing toward him. His body was almost crushed into pieces. Next, he flew backward while vomiting blood and disappeared into the billowing dust. Zhou Xuanji controlled the 26 legendary swords in his mind and got into formation. Hades' god-slaying formation. He could not defeat Mo Yuha, so he could only look for other helpers. Before he came, he had asked emissary Li Qing. Such a summoning formation could be used. As long as the formation was set up by one's own power and not with the help of a formation scroll prepared beforehand, it was not against the rules. He charged toward Mo Yuha again. Mo Yuha noticed the Hades god-slaying formation. He wanted to stop Zhou Xuanji, but Zhou Xuanji was too difficult to deal with. He was shocked in his heart. How does this guy control his swords? Don't tell me those swords have sword spirits? No, there's no aura of a spirit. He's controlling them. Multitasking? Far more than that. Zhou Xuanji did not know how shocked Mo Yuha was, because Mo Yuha had always been at ease, which made Zhou Xuanji feel that Mo Yuha's magic energy was boundless and difficult to defeat. Roar! A horrifying roar came from the Hades god-slaying formation. From the black hole, numerous black tails emerged and danced wildly. A horrifying aura descended and filled the broken underground space. Mo Yuha looked over with a frown. Fear could be seen in his eyes. Zhou Xuanji was pleasantly surprised in his heart. When he used the Hades god-slaying formation, he failed many times, which almost made him lose confidence in the formation. This aura, it's very powerful. It was too late to stop the Hades god-slaying formation now. However, Gu Moyuan charged at him again. His hair was disheveled and he was extremely furious. He slashed at the Hades god-slaying formation with his saber. Ji Xian. If I can't win, don't even think about winning. The saber chi swept across like a blood moon, majestic and domineering. The black tails in the black hole disappeared suddenly. A black beam of light shot out and dispersed the blood moon saber chi before dashing toward Gu Moyuan. Gu Moyuan could not dodge in time and was struck by the black beam. Chapter 434. Ah! Gu Moyuan raised his head and screamed miserably. His body trembled as a layer of black light enveloped his body. Zhou Xuanji and Mo Yuha stopped at the same time and looked at him with astonishment. Even Zhou Xuanji did not expect this to happen. Under their gazes, Gu Moyuan quickly demonized. Demonic chi engulfed him and he turned into a devil with 18 black tails. His eyes shone with a bloody light, and it was impossible to distinguish his true appearance. They could only see his silhouette and he even let out a low roar. Immediately after, Gu Moyuan directly attacked Mo Yuha. Mo Yuha's eyes widened. Zhou Xuanji, on the other hand, was pleasantly surprised. It seemed that this demon was not as simple as it seemed. It could possess a body to fight. He immediately followed, joining forces with Gu Moyuan to fight Mo Yuha. After being possessed by the demon, Gu Moyuan's power increased by several folds. He was not any weaker than Zhou Xuanji and Mo Yuha. How could Mo Yuha block it? He was instantly at a disadvantage. Zhou Xuanji switched between different sword techniques, which were incredibly profound. Gu Muyuan, on the other hand, used brute force to beat Mo Yuha until his hands were numb. This scene shocked everyone in the outside world. What's that? Is this cheating? Use the power of evil and unorthodox Daos. Others set up their own formation. Can you? The son of the demonic emperor bloodline is so pathetic. I feel like he's just a clown before Zhou Xuanji and the Demon Desire River. Is there anything this guy doesn't know? Mo Yuha is finished. Hearing the discussions in the surroundings, the sovereign demon sect's Guanhong clenched her fists, her expression extremely gloomy. He wished he could kill everyone around him. Unfortunately, he did not have such a powerful ability. If this continued, Mo Yuha would definitely lose. The Buddha Ghost sect's anger was no less than his. In fact, it was even greater. After all, Mo Yuha was fighting 1 against 2. Even if he lost, it wouldn't be shameful. But Gu Muyuan, they cursed at Zhou Xuanji's shamelessness in their hearts. Bang! Gu Muyuan stomped on Mo Yuha, breaking his sternum. Fresh blood spurted from his mouth as his body smashed through layers of rocks, rushing towards the ground. Zhou Xuanji followed up with another attack, beating the dog while it was down. In less than 3 breaths of time, Mo Yuha's halberd left his hand. His face contorted and he almost fainted. Facing Zhou Xuanji and Gu Muyuan's barrage of attacks, he could not withstand it at all. Too strong. His heart was filled with unprecedented grievance and unwillingness. At this moment he finally understood what Gu Muyuan had felt before. The sword light flashed. The lickable sword, the soft velvety sword, the dumb sword, the world fool sword, the great compassion sword, and the truth sword pierced into his chest one after another. The combination of various special abilities became the straw that broke the camel's back, causing Mo Yuha to completely lose the ability to fight. Zhou Xuanji used universal attraction and sucked him in front of him. The Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss was pressed against his throat. You lost. Zhou Xuanji said calmly, living up to his initial arrogance. He was as calm as if he had defeated a passerby. Mo Yuha struggled to open his eyes. He gritted his teeth and said, "Kill me." After being defeated to such an extent, he no longer had the face to continue living. Zhou Xuanji said, "Hand over the earth core crystal. There's no need to seek death. There's still a long way to go. Moreover, if you die like this, will you be able to face the sovereign demon sect behind you? Life is long. It's impossible for everything to be smooth sailing and to be undefeated. A powerful cultivator is not invincible, but he will only be knocked down and not defeated. It's nothing if his body is defeated, but if his heart is defeated, then he is really dead." He said it casually, which made Mo Yuha fall into silence. The spectators outside were shocked by his words. If these words were said in another situation, it would only make people scoff. But given the current situation, Zhou Xuanji could have killed Mo Yuha to prevent himself from making enemies. But he did not. Even the sovereign demon sect's side was stunned. Li Zhangqi sighed in amazement. This guy has the spirit of a powerful cultivator and the demeanor of a grandmaster. Forgiving was harder than killing. Zhou Xuanji asked Gu Muyuan to take out his earth core crystals. There were a total of 1.2 million. He said with a smile, "See, not only you but he also took out everything. A man must be able to let go. We will fight again in the future. You are really powerful. Of course you are far inferior to me." Mo Yuha took a deep breath and handed over all his earth core crystals. Zhou Xuanji accepted them quickly. With more than 2 million earth core crystals, Zhou Xuanji was already the final winner. After that, Zhou Xuanji let go of Mo Yuha. This guy was already severely injured and could not recover within a day. As for Gu Muyuan, he would recover naturally after the demons retreated. Zhou Xuanji did not want to kill them. First, they had no enmity with each other. Second, killing them would only bring him endless trouble. He had a bolder idea. To make him a sword slave. At the thought of this, he said to Mo Yuha, "You don't have to blame yourself. I have the potential of a first-class great emperor. No one will look down on you even if you lose to me. Moreover, everyone outside saw the battle just now. They will only praise you." Since things had come to this, his identity must have been exposed. He decided to self-destruct. Mo Yuha opened his eyes wide and cried out in shock, "First-class great emperor? You are Zhou Xuanji?" Zhou Xuanji was definitely the most famous person in the past 100 years. Not only in the Center God province but also in the other God provinces. No wonder, Mo Yuha felt better suddenly. He was only a second-class great emperor after all. He sighed and fell into silence. Zhou Xuanji flew to the side and waited for the examination to end. An hour later, the evil demons retreated and Gu Moyuan woke up. He looked at Zhou Xuanji in fear and did not dare to find trouble with him anymore. He realized that his earth core crystals were no longer there, so he immediately turned around to collect them. Mo Yuha gave up. To him, other than the first place, everything else was a loss. The second place was the one who failed the most. Until the next morning. The Ascender examination was over. All the Ascenders in the mysterious tribulation crater felt a mighty force wrap around them and teleported them out. Zhou Xuanji appeared and the sky shook. Cheers sounded out. Zhou Xuanji is mighty. Awesome, first-class great emperor. Too powerful. A first-class great emperor indeed. He completely crushed the entire field. Not only is he powerful and talented, but his spirit is also admirable. This person is worth learning from our disciples. Should we call him Zhou Xuanji or Ji Xian? The other Ascenders who survived until the end all turned to look at Zhou Xuanji in astonishment. Is Zhou Xuanji? The Divine Cliff's disciples were the most astonished, especially Wu Mingyi. His jaw almost dropped to the ground. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and sighed in his heart. Zhou Xuanji, you dare to protect the northern wilderness humans. Today you will die in the mysterious tribulation crater. A cold snort came, covering all the cheers and silencing the heavens and earth. The sea of clouds in the east opened up, and a pair of gigantic eyes appeared behind it. This pair of gigantic eyes stared at Zhou Xuanji fixedly. Murderous intent filled the heavens and earth, which made everyone shiver. Emissary Li Qing came up to Zhou Xuanji instantly and cried out with a deep voice, "Who are you?" Zhou Xuanji is a core disciple of the Divine Cliff. How can you kill him just because you want to? Chapter 435. Whoosh, above the clouds, everyone turned to look at the giant eye in the sky. This was the Dao Heaven sect, and Zhou Xuanji was the Divine Cliff's treasure. Who would dare to come here to kill him? Zhou Xuanji also looked over. It was not the first time he had seen such large eyes, but he still could not recognize them. To dare to rush here to kill him, it was definitely not due to jealousy. There should really be a grudge between them. But in Zhou Xuanji's eyes, apart from the Heavenly Hall and Xiao Hongjun, who else could he have enmity with? There was another possibility. That was Divine Lord Ji. However, Emissary Li Qing had once told him that Divine Lord Ji was extremely mysterious and never showed himself. The world only knew his name but never saw him. Divine Cliff, this kid carries too much sin. If you really want to protect him, then you'll be making an enemy out of the Center God Province. The pair of huge eyes stared at Emissary Li Qing and shouted in a deep voice. Hearing this, the various sects above the cloud sea were all amazed. Become enemies with the Center God Province? Who the hell are you? Such arrogance. Zhou Xuanji and Emissary Li Qing were speechless. Was this person brainless? The surrounding Ascenders all retreated far away from Zhou Xuanji. Bang! A bolt of lightning suddenly came from the horizon, intending to shatter Zhou Xuanji's soul. Emissary Li Qing quickly struck out with his palm, and a giant green palm appeared out of thin air. It was like a mountain that stood in front of the two of them, blocking Ji Lei. Lightning coiled around the giant green palm, causing cracks to appear all over the surface of the palm, and it instantly collapsed. Emissary Li Qing's expression changed drastically as the lightning was about to strike. A cool breeze blew past, blowing away the lightning. The huge eye on the horizon dissipated, and a towering black shadow suddenly appeared at the edge of the mysterious tribulation crater. There were also similar black shadows in other directions, and there were a total of 23 of them. They were like black pillars that supported the heavens and the earth, causing the people from various forces to be terrified. Who are they? What a strong aura. It's at least a real god or even stronger. Zhou Xuanji made so many enemies? They are afraid that Zhou Xuanji will grow up. After all, this guy is a first-class great emperor. If he grows up, he will affect many things and benefits. Now Zhou Xuanji is dead for sure. Even if Han Shuzi is here, he might not be able to protect him. 23 mysterious powerful cultivators stood at the edge of the mysterious tribulation crater. Zhou Xuanji had no way to escape. He narrowed his eyes, anger rising in his heart. He had never provoked so many experts. An undeserved calamity. These people were definitely looking for an excuse to get rid of him. Don't let me find out that you're all dead, or I won't rest until you die. Zhou Xuanji's eyes were cold as he mumbled to himself. Emissary Li Qing didn't turn around when he heard his words. Instead, he was ready for battle. Even at this critical juncture, he did not retreat. Zhou Xuanji took out the two god-slaying legendary swords and prepared to fight. At this moment, an old voice sounded, "Sect leader of the Taichu sect, are you going to protect him?" The Taichu sect master. Dao Heaven sect master Taichu Yudao. Everyone was shocked. The relationship between the Dao Heaven sect and the Divine Cliff was not close and could only be considered average. Could it be to rope Zhou Xuanji in? Taichu Yudao's voice sounded out from the sky, his tone calm as he said, "Zhou Xuanji received a true legacy from a little friend of mine, and he can be said to be related to me. I naturally have to protect him." The moment he said this, everyone in the sky above the mysterious tribulation crater exploded. Zhou Xuanji had such a relationship with the Dao Heaven sect's sect lord? Emissary Li Qing and Li Zhangqi were also stunned. Zhou Xuanji frowned. He had obtained little friend Taichu Yudao's legacy? Wouldn't that make me his little brother? No, I'm one level lower than him. Wait, whose legacy did I obtain? Sky Sundering Sword Emperor Wang Xiaofei? Hegemon Sword Emperor? Impossible. These two people could not become sworn brothers with Taichu Yudao. He suddenly thought of the world Buddha art and Tianxia map. This art and treasure could transcend the mortal realm. Even in the Great Thousand World they were still powerful. From the beginning to the end, he did not know who created the world Buddha art. It was said that the world Buddha art had more than 3 levels. The more he thought about it, the more he frowned. Little friend? What a joke. Taichu Yudao, do you really want to become enemies with the entire Center God province? Another voice sounded out, filled with murderous intent. They did not act because they were wary of Taichu Yudao. Taichu Yudao's voice sounded out again, "In 10 breaths, if you do not retreat, then stay here forever." Domineering. No wonder he was once the most powerful cultivator in the Center God province. Perhaps he might be the most powerful too. Everyone was subdued by his boldness. The 23 black figures fell into silence. Taichu Yudao's domineering attitude caught them off guard and they hesitated. Soon they disappeared one after another. The first voice sounded out again, "Taichu Yudao, you can protect him now but you can't protect him forever. Your Dao Heaven sect might perish soon." Taichu Yudao did not reply, and the other sects did not take it seriously either. Who would not say something harsh? They were more concerned about the relationship between Taichu Yudao and Zhou Xuanji. Would the Dao Heaven sect ally with the Divine Cliff because of this? If these two factions worked together, they could sweep across the Center God province. The sovereign demon sect's Guanhong fell into deep thought with a dark expression. The Buddha ghost sect's people were also whispering among themselves. Emissary Li Qing heaved a sigh of relief. He turned around and asked Zhou Xuanji in astonishment, "You have such a relationship with the Dao Heaven sect?" Zhou Xuanji shook his head and said, "I don't know. It's my first time ascending." Emissary Li Qing nodded. He was not guessing that Zhou Xuanji was hiding something. Perhaps it was the good karma left by Zhou Xuanji's ancestors. Sei Juqian looked at Zhou Xuanji with a complicated expression. His heart was filled with reluctance. He hated, not because he hated Zhou Xuanji, but because he hated himself. If he was as powerful as Taichu Yudao, he would have protected Zhou Xuanji too. Who would not want such a prodigy? The more he thought about it, the more frustrated he became. He wanted to leave immediately. Li Zhangqi said, "The Ascender examination is over. Begin to count the Earth Core crystals." As he spoke, the 36 Dao Heaven sect disciples flew down and inspected the geocentric flame crystal for the last person. Zhou Xuanji took out all the Earth Core crystals and placed them in front of him, waiting for the inspection. He was still thinking about who those people were. Emissary Li Qing saw through his thoughts and said softly, "They are probably first-rate factions in the Center God province. Those sects that came might be one of them too, such as the Sovereign Demon sect and the Buddha Ghost sect. Don't overlook them just because they are here." Zhou Xuanji nodded. He was not that foolish. The leaders of the other sects were not here after all. But why did those powerful cultivators not dare to show their faces just now? Half an hour later. The results of the Ascender examination were out. As expected, Zhou Xuanji ranked first. The second was a 7th Revolution Golden Immortal from the Buddha Ghost sect. He hid himself well and was not encountered by Zhou Xuanji. Gu Moyuan was ranked 7th. It was too late for him to plunder on the last day. Mo Yuha did not have a single Earth Core crystal, so he was eliminated. Other than Zhou Xuanji, the other Divine Cliff disciples did not make it into the top 10. The top 10 were brought up to the sky by the Dao Heaven sect disciples, while Li Zhangqi led the other sects away. Zhou Xuanji was looking forward to what kind of supreme treasure could help him reach 10th Revolution Golden Immortal quickly. Once he reached 7th Revolution Golden Immortal, he would be able to use the Armageddon legendary sword. Just thinking about it made him excited. Chapter 436. Under the guidance of the Dao Heaven sect disciples, Zhou Xuanji and the others came to a palace. At the same time their seniors followed them. Gu Moyuan kept staring at Zhou Xuanji as though he wanted to eat him alive. Within the palace, 3 elders of the Dao Heaven sect were waiting. They looked like they had walked out of a painting, and they had benevolent looks on their faces. Their white hair fluttered in the wind. Congratulations to the geniuses for winning the Ascender examination. Next, you will receive your rewards according to your ranking. The white-haired elder in the middle smiled and began to receive the rewards from the 10th place. Emissary Li Qing sent a telepathic message to Zhou Xuanji, "We will stay in the Dao Heaven sect for a few days and wait for the Cliff Lord to pick us up." Zhou Xuanji nodded slightly. He understood that he would surely die if he went out now. But he did not know if Han Shuzi could stop so many powerful cultivators. Soon it was Zhou Xuanji's turn. The Dao Heaven sect put the prize into the storage ring, and Zhou Xuanji swept it with his divine sense and found that there were a few small mountains of pure spirit pills. Apart from this, there was also a red pearl that was as big as a fist. It was sparkling and translucent and it looked like a fruit. He was curious about what it was but was too embarrassed to ask. "My little friend Xuanji, why don't you stay for a few days? Our sect lord wants to talk to you," the white-haired elder said with a chuckle. The white-haired elder chuckled. The 2 elders beside him also nodded at Zhou Xuanji with a smile. This kid's talent was even more ridiculous than their sect lords, so they naturally wanted to befriend him. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "Then I shall accept." He also wanted to meet Taichu Yudao. After that he left with emissary Li Qing. Gu Moyuan stopped him suddenly and said with gritted teeth, "Zhou Xuanji, the next time we meet I will surely defeat you. Don't die." After that he left with the Buddha ghost sect's true god. Zhou Xuanji had 2 chances to kill him but he did not. This made him feel a little complicated. He decided to go into closed-door cultivation after returning. He would not come out until he broke through to Void Extreme Immortal. Zhou Xuanji did not mind but emissary Li Qing shook his head and laughed. "It's so good to be young," he sighed in amazement. Zhou Xuanji curled his lip and said, "I'm young but he's not." Only God knew how old Gu Moyuan was. In the Taoist temple, Zhou Xuanji finally saw the famous Taichu Yudao. He entered the temple by himself while emissary Li Qing waited outside. This person was even more ordinary than he had imagined. Standing there, his aura was void as if he had become one with heaven and earth. He did not have the aura of an expert at all. However, the more he thought about it, the more he respected Taichu Yudao. This was another kind of expert who had reached the peak. They had seen through everything and restrained their sharpness. Taichu Yudao stroked his beard and said with a smile, as expected of a first-class great sovereign, "His aptitude is indeed amazing." Zhou Xuanji cupped his fist and said, "Thank you for your help, Sect Lord Taichu." Taichu Yudao gestured for him to come forward. Zhou Xuanji was not on guard and walked over without hesitation. If Taichu Yudao wanted to kill him, he could have done so directly, and he would not have been able to stop him. Taichu Yudao took his hand and sighed emotionally. "You should also want to know who the young friend I'm talking about is, right?" Without waiting for Zhou Xuanji's reply, he started talking to himself. Just as Zhou Xuanji had guessed. His little friend was the one who created the world Buddha art and the Tianxia map. He died 180,000 years ago, and the Tianxia map fell into the mortal world. That person was called Gu Tianxia, and he had the bloodline of both humans and demons. Ever since he was born he had not been accepted by either race. After going through countless trials and tribulations, he created the world Buddha art and the Tianxia map, becoming incredibly famous. He challenged experts everywhere and emerged victorious, until he met Taichu Yudao. After losing to Taichu Yudao, the 2 of them appreciated each other and discussed the Tao at the Dao Heaven sect for thousands of years. When mentioning Gu Tianxia, Taichu Yudao continuously sighed, his tone filled with regret. If such a genius could live for a long time, he might have been able to stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Zhou Xuanji could not help but ask, "Who killed him?" Taichu Yudao frowned and said, "I'm not sure. I only know that person's surname is Xian Daoya." Zhou Xuanji almost cursed out. So it was that bastard. No wonder this fellow would change his fate for him, allowing him to obtain information about the Tianxia map by chance. Feng Kyul, Daoya Old Man, and Devil Emperor Dugu had all become his chess pieces without knowing it. Xian Daoya said that he could become Zhou Xuanji's trump card, but he had killed Gu Tianxia. This promise could also be a threat. Zhou Xuanji's mind worked like lightning, thinking of countless possibilities. He did not say it out loud and pretended that he did not know who Shen Daoya was. He could not convince himself to believe Shen Daoya, nor could he believe Taichu Yudao. The best thing to do was to pretend to be a chess piece and wait and see. Zhou Xuanji looked up and asked, "Between you and that person, who is stronger?" This question was very important. Taichu Yudao said in a low voice, "I've only seen him once and did not have the chance to act. However, he was able to easily escape from me, so his cultivation should be higher than mine." In actuality, he did not feel that person was a match for him, but in order to make Zhou Xuanji cautious, he could only exaggerate. Zhou Xuanji felt a headache. A powerful enemy that even Taichu Yudao could not defeat. When would he have the strength to fight? However, that fellow had always been in the shadows. There was definitely a power more powerful than him restricting him, making it so that he did not dare to show himself. For Zhou Xuanji, this was a breakthrough point. You can stay in the Dao Heaven sect and wait for Han Shuzi to come and pick you up. That boy is very powerful and might surpass me someday, Taichu Yudao said as he chuckled. Taichu Yudao chuckled. There were only a few people in the world who had the right to call Han Shuzi a brat. Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, "Thank you, Dao Heaven sect, for hosting me." Taichu Yudao waved his hand and said with a smile, "If I fall one day and the world belongs to you, I hope you can treat the Dao Heaven sect well." Fall. Zhou Xuanji thought about it and said seriously, "I owe you a debt of gratitude, so I can naturally do this. Of course, the prerequisite is that I have the strength to do it." Taichu Yudao nodded with a smile, not doubting Zhou Xuanji's potential at all. The two chatted for a while more before Zhou Xuanji left. The Taoist temple fell silent. Taichu Yudao stopped smiling and took out a wooden stick. There were two strange words carved on it. He mumbled, "What you said was true. I'm suddenly very interested in who is playing this game of chess. It's time for the trump card you left behind to come out." The wooden stick in his hand dissipated into motes of light that floated in the air. On the other side, Zhou Xuanji and Emissary Li Qing returned to the residence. Emissary Li Qing smiled and said, "The Dao Fetus Red Loath Pearl is a Khanate creation, and it has existed for more than 100,000 years. Even the Dao Heaven sect has less than 10 of them. You can use them when you return to the Divine Cliff. After all, you will be in seclusion for a long time." Zhou Xuanji nodded. In the Taoist temple, Taichu Yudao had told him about the Dao Fetus Red Loath Pearl's origins, so he wanted to quickly return to the Divine Cliff. The two parted ways and returned to their respective rooms. Zhou Xuanji sat on the bed and took out the ancient god sword, summoning the 9 souls. He asked Gu Tianxia and Shen Daoya to see if anyone knew. Emperor Zhao sneered, "Shen Daoya? He's just a paper tiger. Don't be fooled by him." Come. Wonderful Bookstore. Chapter 437. Hearing Emperor Zhao's words, Zhou Xuanji could not help but feel surprised, so he asked about Shen Daoya's strength. Emperor Zhao smiled and said, "This guy is a special soul that can escape beyond the 5 elements heaven and earth. He comes and goes without a trace, so he gives off an unfathomable feeling. However, he is not strong. He was able to kill Gu Tianxia back then because Gu Tianxia was unprepared. At that time, Gu Tianxia and Divine Lord Ji fought and both were injured, which gave him the opportunity. I once met Shen Daoya. At that time he wanted to split his soul and take over my body, but I easily killed him. His tone was arrogant and full of disdain. An existence that could intimidate Taichu Yudao had been accidentally defeated by him. How could he not be happy?" Emperor Hanlin then said, "Even so, no one can kill him. This is also a form of strength. He is truly an undying existence in the great thousand worlds." Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji could not help but think of Daoya Old Man's undying divine ability. So it was a legacy. Emperor Zhao spoke again, "Brother Zhou, find a chance to resurrect me. I'll bring you on a horse galloping across the Center God province. Although I'm not even 80,000 years old, I almost became the sovereign demon sect master." Back then, he began to boast endlessly and Zhou Xuanji was a little doubtful. This guy was once a sect master candidate of the sovereign demon sect? The sovereign demon sect was a force even stronger than the Divine Cliff. Was this guy really that powerful? The current sovereign demon sect master had lived for hundreds of thousands of years. Venerable Shen snorted coldly, "Sovereign demon sect?" When this sovereign was still alive, there seemed to be a junior who founded the sovereign demon sect. Emperor Zhao laughed. "You really know how to brag." The other mighty figures spoke one after another. "Emperor Zhao, you just want to revive. Alright, you still haven't told me how you died." "I know, he died of chi deviation. Tiske, the sovereign demon sect has already declined. Are you looking down on me? We're all remnant souls, so stop boasting. Zhou Xuanji could tell that these souls all wanted to revive. It was not impossible. But not for now. Without sufficient strength, he still wanted to understand the boundless universe through the 9 souls. After a series of inquiries, the pressure in his heart suddenly decreased. Although Xian Daoya was undying, his combat power was not strong, so there was no need to worry too much about him. What he had to worry about the most was that Xian Daoya would use some tricks and attract other experts to deal with him. After chatting for an hour, Zhou Xuanji put away the ancient god sword. He sat cross-legged on the bed and began to cultivate. This was the Dao Heaven sect, so he wasn't afraid of sneak attacks. Meanwhile, news of the Ascender examination in the mysterious Tribulation Crater spread like wildfire. The news that Ji Xian was Zhou Xuanji swept across the entire region like a hurricane. Within just 10 days, the entire Center God province was discussing this. First-class Great Emperor Zhou Xuanji. He had ascended. He had first subdued Shi Shinzong before defeating Gu Moyuan and Mo Yuha, obtaining first place in the Ascender examination. In an instant, Zhou Xuanji once again became an influential figure, and the younger generation all looked forward to him. Zhou Xuanji was not even 100 years old. These days, whenever Zhou Xuanji went out to walk around the Dao Heaven sect, the disciples all looked at him differently. Wherever he went, there would be people discussing and pointing at him. Of course, no one dared to get close to him. A first-class great sovereign only existed in legends. They were already very excited to be able to see one with their own eyes. 24 days had passed since the Ascender examination ended. Han Shuzi finally came. He came to his residence and all the disciples surrounded him. Cliff Lord, you are so slow, Zhou Xuanji said faintly. They only needed 6 days to get here, but Han Shuzi took more than half a month. However, Han Shuzi came to save him, so he could not blame him. He could not wait to absorb the Dao Fetus Red Loath Pearl in isolation. Let's go, Han Shuzi said with a smile. I have already informed the Taichu sect lord. After that, he waved his right hand and the group flew up with the wind. A green gust of wind swept toward the horizon. Along the way, all the Divine Cliff's disciples were careful, fearing that the enemy would appear again. Han Shuzi praised everyone before saying to Zhou Xuanji, after this mission, focus on your cultivation and try to break through to 10th Revolution Golden Immortal as soon as possible. The other disciples were envious. Becoming a 10th Revolution Golden Immortal after ascending for less than a year. Compared to him, they were really... Wu Mingyi felt the most complicated because he ascended on the same day as Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, Cliff Lord, can you help me investigate the whereabouts of the 18 divine swords? I will find them myself. 18 divine swords. Emissary Li Qing looked at him in surprise. Han Shuzi smiled with narrowed eyes and said, who told you that the 18 divine swords really exist? In the Center God province, the 18 divine swords were just a legend. Zhou Xuanji replied telepathically. There was nothing to hide about Magistrate Chui's identity. After all, he was very powerful. Who would dare to make trouble for him? Han Shuzi heard him and looked at him deeply. The others were shocked. They immediately understood. No wonder Zhou Xuanji could ascend to the divine cliff. He should have appeared in the heavenly palace. That's easy. I have something else to tell you, Han Shuzi said as he nodded. Han Shuzi nodded and the smile on his face disappeared. Zhou Xuanji looked at him curiously. Han Shuzi did not care about the others and said straightforwardly, 2 more people ascended from the northern wilderness region. They are Baihao Yisin and Xiao Hongjun. You seem to have enmity with them. Baihao Yisin is easy to deal with. That boy has a carefree personality and will not ask his revered teacher for help. However, Xiao Hongjun will definitely take revenge. She has already returned to the Bloodbat Cave and will most likely ask old ancestor Bloodbat to deal with you. That demon's cultivation is not inferior to mine, so you must be careful. Zhou Xuanji frowned. He had never thought that these 2 fellows would also come to the Center God province. He decided that when he reached the Divine Cliff, he would take out the Spirit Communication Heart to contact Marquis and ask about the situation in the northern wilderness region. Han Shuzi then asked, is Devil Emperor Dugu also in the northern wilderness region? Is your relationship with him good? Hearing this, Emissary Li Qing's expression slightly changed. Back then, Devil Emperor Dugu had charged into the Divine Cliff alone and was the Divine Cliff's mortal enemy. Zhou Xuanji nodded and did not hide anything. He had his own friends and he believed that Han Shuzi would not be so narrow-minded. After hearing this, Han Shuzi nodded and said, Devil Emperor Dugu is indeed peerless and peerless among second-class great emperors. However, this person can easily go berserk, so you must be careful. Easily go berserk? Zhou Xuanji's heart thumped. That old guy wouldn't go berserk in the northern wilderness region and slaughter all living beings, right? Don't worry. It's just that he can't withstand the spiritual qi of the Center God province. He'll be fine in the mortal world. Otherwise, why would he hide in the northern wilderness region? Han Shuzi saw through his thoughts and consoled him, causing him to instantly heave a sigh of relief. Zhou Xuanji suddenly felt that even if he came to the Center God province, he would not be able to see through the northern wilderness region. Why were Wang Ho, Devil Emperor Dugu, Bai Hao Isin, Xian Daoya, and Xiao Hongjun in the northern wilderness region? He couldn't understand, so he didn't ask. Half a day later. After that, they returned to the Divine Cliff. After returning to his courtyard, Zhou Xuanji immediately took out the spirit communication heart and contacted Marquis. Mobile version of the fastest updated website. M. Chapter 438. Only Zhou Xuanji could enter this courtyard. He had given the order that everyone else had to call out to him before entering, including Shi Shinzong. Shi Shinzong and Fei Hai were not here. They were most likely studying in Divine Cliff City. Soon Wang Ho's voice came from the psychic heart. What is it? Zhou Xuanji immediately asked about the situation in the northern wilderness region, and Marquis replied. After he left, the northern wilderness region remained peaceful. Devil Emperor Dugu guarded the northern part of the continent and never left his residence. The other experts who could threaten the northern wilderness region did not cause any trouble, and it was a peaceful time. Zhou Xuanji's heart was finally relieved. He told them about Xiao Hongjuan's ascension and told Marquis to be careful. Then, he put away the heart of communication, gave a few instructions to the maid, and returned to his room to begin his closed-door training. Sitting cross-legged on the bed, he held the Tao Fetus Red Loath Pearl in his arms. He immediately used world internalization and absorbed the spiritual energy within the Tao Fetus Red Loath Pearl. Boom. Zhou Xuanji felt a jolt in his soul as spiritual qi surged into his body. The feeling of spiritual qi cleansing his bones and tendons was really wonderful. He entered a state of full concentration and cultivation. Inside the Cliff Master's palace, Han Shuzi gathered the 36 envoys, his personal disciples, and all the elders together. He sat on the head of the table and began to speak. On the way to the Tao Heaven sect, I encountered those people who wanted to kill Zhou Xuanji. Their target has already shifted to our Divine Cliff. According to my investigations, the factions involved include the Kuemu Hall, the 7 Big Dipper sects, the Buddha Ghost sect, the Black Thunder Aperture, and the 8 Desolate Spirit sect. Although I killed 8 people, it's far from enough. The Divine Cliff's greatest disaster in the past 100,000 years is about to come. I don't want to explain why we have to protect Zhou Xuanji. You should all understand that you must be on your guard in case the enemy invades at any time. His voice became more serious than ever, and no one refuted. As the rulers of the Divine Cliff, they knew that the Divine Cliff's development had reached a bottleneck. They could no longer excavate the resources of the mortal realms. Zhou Xuanji was their hope to break through this obstacle. The eldest disciple, Yang Yutian, cupped his fist and said, "Do we need to allocate resources to Zhou Xuanji?" He was not jealous of Zhou Xuanji. Compared to the Cliff Master, he was more willing to see the Divine Cliff prosper. Moreover, according to his understanding, Zhou Xuanji had created his own sect in the mortal realm and loved swords. He most likely would not accept the position of Cliff Master. Han Shuzi shook his head and said, "He has his own fortuitous encounters. There's no need for us to add fuel to the fire. It's enough for us to help him find out the whereabouts of the 18 divine swords." 18 divine swords. A commotion broke out in the hall. Yang Yuqian was stunned for a moment before he said, "I do know of a holy sword, but this sword is located?" He told them the location of the holy sword, causing everyone to be surprised. "Why is it in his hands?" "If that's the case, how did you get the sword?" "Forget it. Let's find out the whereabouts of the other sacred swords." "I agree. Cliff Lord, you cannot leave the Divine Cliff. If you leave, the Divine Cliff might be attacked." Han Shuzi frowned as well. There was fear in his eyes. He sighed. "Let's look for the whereabouts of the other holy swords. That person is crazy, but he is extremely powerful. Even if I were to encounter him, I wouldn't have any chance of winning." The others nodded in agreement. Yang Yuqian frowned but did not say anything. Zhou Xuanji's ascension caused a huge commotion in the Center God province. Ever since he went into closed-door cultivation, the Divine Cliff's disciples were often ambushed by mysterious factions when they went out on missions. Even the Divine Cliff city was infiltrated by enemies. Although the higher-ups could understand it, the disciples were displeased. They felt that it was unfair. For Zhou Xuanji, the divine cliff placed them in danger. Soon the divine cliff was filled with complaints. 10 months later. Analyzed that the sword owner has reached 93 years old. Gotcha started. Ding. Congratulations, the sword owner obtained glorious gold, God Temple diamond sword, heavenly soul shaking wind sword. Zhou Xuanji was woken up by the sword spirit's voice. He did not open his eyes but continued to absorb the Tao Fetus Red Loath Pearl's spiritual qi, because he was about to break through. The Tao Fetus Red Loath Pearl had accumulated spiritual qi for hundreds of thousands of years. In less than a year he was about to break through to 6th Revolution Golden Immortal, which meant that he would reach 7th Revolution Golden Immortal in at most 2 years. The Armageddon legendary sword was waving at him. 5 days later. He successfully broke through to 6th Revolution Golden Immortal. He continued to cultivate. In the courtyard next to him, Shi Shinzong sensed his magic energy aura and frowned slightly. No, I can't be left behind by him, he said with gritted teeth. He stopped practicing with the sword and sat down to internalize qi. Boom! Under the thunderous sky, mountains were densely packed like spikes. Bai Hao Yisin knelt at the foot of a mountain, and Feng Qiu was beside him. At this moment, Feng Qiu was only left with his soul. He was like a candle flame, flickering and about to dissipate at any moment. How much longer do we have to kneel for? He asked with gritted teeth. Bai Hao Yisin used the same method as Zhou Xuanji to ascend. In order to follow him, Feng Qiu gave up his body and was only left with his soul. Since things had come to this, he could only follow Bai Hao Yisin to the end. Bai Hao Yisin straightened his back and placed his hands on his legs as he said, "Wait for this emperor's revered teacher to descend. When that time comes, he can casually point at you and you will recover your body." Hearing this, Feng Qiu became excited. He could not maintain his soul form for too long. After all, his magic energy was not powerful enough. Whoosh, a cold gust of wind blew, causing Feng Qiu's soul to tremble. "Bai Hao, you still have the face to come back?" A dignified voice sounded out. This sentence caused Feng Qiu's expression to instantly fall. Fudge. Bai Hao Yisin had come to the mortal realm without telling his revered teacher? If that was the case, would his revered teacher become angry whenever he saw him? The more Feng Qiu thought about it, the more terrified he became. Bai Hao Yisin sighed and said, "Revered teacher, this emperor was wrong. This emperor was instigated by a traitor. That old fellow is too sinister, you shouldn't have made friends with him." As he spoke, a figure appeared in front of him and slapped him across the face, sending him flying and crashing into a mountain. Feng Qiu was given a big fright and his body trembled as he looked at the newcomer in terror. It was a well-built man who looked 40 or 50 years old. His black hair was mixed with many white hairs, and he wore tattered gray clothes, looking like a boorish man from the mountains. He looked at Bai Hao Yisin and said in a low voice, "Are you blaming teacher?" Bai Hao Yisin hurriedly landed and knelt as he begged, "Revered teacher, how could I dare? I was wrong." Seeing that his revered teacher was angry, he did not dare to call himself, this emperor, anymore. The well-built man looked at him and said coldly, "From today onwards, don't descend into the mortal realm again. Teacher will give you a mission and you must properly cultivate." Bai Hao Yisin felt quite surprised and asked, "What mission?" The well-built man replied, "Defeat someone and bring glory to me." The 12th on the great emperor's steel, Zhou Xuanji. Bai Hao Yisin's face instantly became pale, and he almost coughed up a mouthful of blood. Chapter 439. Bai Hao Yisin forced a smile and said, "Revered teacher, Zhou Xuanji is still young and I've seen him before. Why suppress him?" Feng Qiu's expression was strange. "Young? Suppress? Are you kidding me?" The muscular man stared at him and cursed, "I told you to fight him, so you did it. He's a first-class great emperor. Once he grows up, he will be 9 heavens above you." Bai Hao Yisin felt depressed and asked, "What's the reason?" "There has to be a reason, right? Is it because he's too talented?" The muscular man replied, "The person behind him is from the great Emperor Dao court. Ever since he was born, the great Thousand Worlds' fate changed. The races of the other divine provinces showed signs of invading the Center God province. First, it was the Northern Wilderness region and next, it might be the great Thousand World. It's all because of him." Bai Hao Yisin opened his eyes wide and said with gritted teeth, "Great Emperor Dao court? Wait, it can't be that old guy." Feng Qiu was quite confused. What was the great Emperor Dao court? It sounded very powerful. "It's him, Xian Daoya." The Daoya old man beside Zhou Xuanji is the reincarnation of his soul. The muscular man nodded with a sharp look in his eyes. By how Isen's breathing became ragged and his anger grew. So that's why. Xian Daoya tricked him into descending to be Zhou Xuanji's stepping stone. How hateful. In the blink of an eye 2 years passed. Zhou Xuanji reached 95 years old and obtained 3 legendary swords. They were the Abyssal Cleaving Sword, Silver Moon Sword, and 3 Leopard 1 Sword. They were all glorious gold grade. To him, his luck was a little bad, but he did not give up. Because he was about to break through to 7th Revolution Golden Immortal. It had to be said that the Tao Fetus Red Loath Pearl's spiritual chi was too massive. As his cultivation grew, the rate at which he absorbed spiritual chi increased, and he felt that it was inexhaustible. He even suspected that this pearl contained an independent world. Other than spiritual chi, the Tao Fetus Red Loath Pearl also had a special energy that could continuously improve his body. After breaking through in 8 days, he finally reached 7th Revolution Golden Immortal. After consolidating his magic energy, he immediately took out the all-evil yin-yang destruction. At first glance, the sword looked like a pair of scissors with black and white blades. There was a gap of 3 centimeters between the 2 blades, the white blade and the black blade respectively. There were dozens of tiny black and white beads the size of sesame seeds embedded in the sword guard. He swallowed his saliva and muttered, "What a terrifying power." Even though the all-evil yin-yang destruction didn't move and he didn't inject any magic power into it, he could still feel the surging energy contained within it. If it were to explode, it could destroy everything. He smiled in satisfaction. He didn't test the power of the all-evil yin-yang destruction, but put it back into the supreme warehouse. He didn't stand up and leave. Instead, he continued to absorb the Tao Fetus Red Loath Pearl. Since he was in seclusion, he naturally had to absorb the Tao Fetus Red Loath Pearl in one go. In the courtyard. Shi Shinzong was currently practicing his swordsmanship when Fei Hai came to his side and asked curiously, "Did Senior Zhou break through again?" Ever since he knew that Ji Xian was Zhou Xuanji, he was extremely excited and acted arrogantly wherever he went. Now, as long as he went to Divine Cliff City, many disciples would try to curry favor with him. Of course, there were also people who mocked and ridiculed him, but he did not take it to heart. Judging from the Divine Cliff's intentions, it was obvious that they wanted to nurture Zhou Xuanji as the sect's treasure. Naturally, he did not care about the jealous words of some disciples. Shi Shinzong continued to practice as he replied, He behaved calmly. He was used to it. He did not want to compete with Zhou Xuanji anymore. This was the first time Shi Shinzong had felt powerless towards a person's talent. In the past, he thought that he could catch up to Zhou Xuanji. From the looks of it, however, he had set his sights on the Ascender assessment. He wanted to obtain such an opportunity as well. By the way, the 100 Swords gathering will begin in 10 years. Don't you want to go and have a look? Fei Hai could tell that he was not in a good mood, so he changed the topic. Shi Shinzong was a second-grade great emperor, someone he had to curry favor with. Hearing this, Shi Shinzong stopped and asked, "The desolate North's 7 sword emperors are also participating?" Fei Hai nodded and said excitedly, "The 100 Swords martial competition is a grand event for sword cultivators like you. It gathers all the powerful sword cultivators in the Center God province and is hosted by Sword Lord Gu. I heard that you can obtain the Heaven and Earth Sword embryo from the 100 Swords martial competition this time. Don't you want to try?" Shi Shinzong started to think. Fei Hai did not disturb Zhou Xuanji. After making sure that Zhou Xuanji did not intend to come out, he turned around and left. Cliff Master Hall. Han Shuzi sat on the chair and sighed, "A 7th Revolution Golden Immortal. This kid's absorption ability is too strong. To think that my joke back then would come true." Yang Yuqian, who was standing in front of him, also had a complicated expression. He admired Zhou Xuanji's talent, but he was also a little unwilling. Fortunately, he was neither jealous nor resentful. Yang Yuqian cupped his fist and said, "Revered teacher, those sects have been acting more and more brazenly recently. I'm afraid that a war is about to break out. But I keep feeling that there's a conspiracy. They have been delaying and I don't know what they're waiting for." Han Shuzi said with squinted eyes, "Don't you understand what they're waiting for? Who is the greatest threat in the Divine Cliff? If they want to start a war, they have to get rid of the greatest threat first." Yang Yuqian opened his eyes wide. Wasn't the most powerful cultivator in the Divine Cliff Han Shuzi? Could it be that the enemy was trying to assassinate Han Shuzi? "Yuqian, we must prepare for the worst. If I die, the position of Cliff Master will belong to you. You must build a good relationship with Wuxia and Zhou Xuanji. They are the two best people in the Divine Cliff, especially Zhou Xuanji. I see that this kid is magnanimous and principled. If you don't target him, he will definitely repay you. Han Shuzi got up and said with deep meaning. He had always seen the conflict between Yang Yutian and Wuxia but rarely mentioned it. Yang Yutian said anxiously, "Revered teacher, what are you talking about? How can you die?" Han Shuzi waved his hand and said with a smile, "I'm just saying I've already written my will. If one day you face the same situation as me, remember to leave a backup plan. Don't let the Divine Cliff die." Yang Yutian was silent. The heavy responsibility was suffocating him. He truly felt what the position of Cliff Master represented. After that, Han Shuzi asked him to leave. Only Han Shuzi was left in the palace. Han Shuzi sat down and said faintly, "Come out." Right after he spoke, a black shadow appeared. It looked like a person. The black shadow laughed coldly. "Han Shuzi, it seems like you already know the outcome. Why are you still so stubborn?" Han Shuzi said calmly, "To protect the Divine Cliff, I already knew that you have been suppressing the Divine Cliff. But for the peace of the Center God Province, you did not make a big move." The black shadow paced back and forth in front of him and seemed to be thinking about something. A while later, the black shadow came to a realization and said, "I see. Zhou Xuanji is related to the previous Cliff Master of the Divine Cliff, right? Or else, why would you protect him so desperately? You can't just talk about talent alone." Han Shuzi's pupils contracted. Just when he was about to speak, the black shadow burrowed into the ground. He could not stop it in time. With a long sigh, his body collapsed like a pile of mud. His eyes became hazy as he mumbled, "If you were here, how would we deal with this tribulation?" Mobile version of the fastest updated website. M. Chapter 440. 3 years later. Zhou Xuanji was 98 years old and successfully broke through to 8th Revolution Golden Immortal. At the same time, he also obtained 2 ordinary sword techniques and 5 divine swords, 4 amethyst divine swords and 1 heavenly soul divine sword. They were the Memory Sword, the Torrential Rain Sword, the Earth Attraction Sword, the Great Western Dipper Sword, and the Sunset Heavenly Sword. Zhou Xuanji was most interested in the Memory Sword. Although it was only an amethyst godly sword, its special ability was not bad. If he was stabbed by it, he would easily fall into his memories. In the midst of battle, if he could make his opponent recall their memories, it might have an unexpected effect. Zhou Xuanji somehow thought of the animations, dramas, and movies in his previous life. Whenever he started reminiscing, he was about to die. After reaching the 8th Revolution Golden Immortal Realm, he stopped. He took out the ancient God Sword and summoned the 9 souls. The spiritual energy of the Tao Fetus Red Loathe Pearl hadn't been used up yet, but he felt that things were going too smoothly. "If this goes on, will there be repercussions?" Demon Lord Rian replied, "The Tao Fetus Red Loathe Bead cannot be considered a treasure of heaven and earth. Just like your Violet Demon Monarch's heart, it can be considered a great fortune of heaven and earth. The Tao Heaven sect treats them as treasures, and they are only able to establish their current network of connections through these items. You don't have to worry." The 9 souls within the ancient God Sword were Emperor Hanlin, Saber Monarch Donghai, Demon Lord Ryuan, Emperor Songhai, Ghost Emperor Zhangtian, Emperor Zhao, Tao Lord Shentian, Lu Wuji, and Lord Xian. The most mysterious ones, Tao Lord Shentian and Lord Xian, were still unknown. The others had all made a name for themselves in the Great Thousand World, which allowed Zhou Xuanji to understand many historical truths that no one knew about. He curiously asked, "How did the Tao Fetus Red Loathe Pearl come about?" This thing was so powerful that the 5-colored immortal fruit was nothing compared to it. Lu Wuji replied, "It was born from the Tao Fetus tree. The Tao Fetus tree has 7 colored fruits, and the Tao Fetus Red Loathe Pearl is the 3rd grade fruit." "Only 3rd class?" Zhou Xuanji blinked and suddenly wanted to snatch the Tao embryo tree. Of course he was just thinking about it. He was indebted to Tai Chi Yudao. Even if he had the power, he would not do such a thing. Zhou Xuanji chatted a bit more before putting away the ancient God Sword. He sent a voice transmission to Fei Hai, who was cultivating in the mansion, and asked him to investigate Xian Xianghua's whereabouts. It had already been 6 years since she ascended. With Xian Xianghua's personality, she should have already made a name for herself. To prevent any accidents, he even mentioned Bai Hao Yisan and Xiao Hongjun. If his enemies found out that he had Fei Hai investigate the whereabouts of the 3 of them, they would probably think that he was investigating his enemies. Fei Hai immediately set off. He had many friends outside the Divine Cliff and even more so inside the Divine Cliff. All he had to do was ask his friends to pay attention when they went out to train. Half a year later. Inside the Cliff Master's palace. Han Shuzi, who was cultivating quietly, suddenly opened his eyes and cried out in a deep voice, "Who is it? Come out." A burst of eerie laughter rang out, as if a malicious ghost had entered the hall. Immediately after, a man emerged from a wooden pillar at the side. His upper body was exposed, his white hair scattered over his shoulders, his skin was dark and his face was twisted and ferocious. He wore a brocade robe with poisonous thorns in its mouth. He stared at Han Shuzi and said coldly, "Han Shuzi, your death has come." Han Shuzi's pupils suddenly constricted when he saw him, and he immediately stood up. "Malicious Buddha? How could you?" Han Shuzi cried out with a trembling voice, his eyes filled with fear. Another figure appeared from the ground in front of him. It was also a malicious Buddha like a clone. This malicious Buddha laughed sinisterly and said, "You should know who you have offended. Someone asked me to kill you. It's that simple." Numerous malicious Buddhas appeared around Han Shuzi and surrounded him. "To be honest, I don't understand you. You have offended both sides because of Zhou Xuanji. One is the great Emperor Dao Court and the other is the demonic emperor. Where do you get your confidence from?" The 9 malicious Buddhas asked at the same time. Their voices gathered together and the pressure increased tremendously. Han Shuzi frowned and said, "You were asked by the demonic emperor?" The malicious Buddhas laughed condescendingly, and murderous intent burst out from their eyes at the same time. They charged at Han Shuzi together. Boom! A world-shaking explosion came, shaking the entire divine cliff. Zhou Xuanji, who was cultivating in his residence, opened his eyes in shock. He immediately sent out his divine sense and saw that the Cliff Master Hall was engulfed by billowing dust and intense flames. Countless disciples were rushing over from all directions. Enemy attack. Someone sneak attacked the Cliff Master? Prepare for battle. What's going on? Who dares to charge into our divine cliff? Loud shouts sounded out as the 36 emissaries and legacy disciples rushed over. Zhou Xuanji frowned and walked out of the room. All the servants in the mansion were in a state of panic. Even Fei Hai looked terrified. Shi Shinzong came before Zhou Xuanji and said in a low voice, "They might be coming for you. I feel that you should run." The other party directly attacked the Cliff Master. They are evidently determined to win. If they directly attacked Zhou Xuanji, it meant that they were wary of Han Shuzi. However, since they attacked Han Shuzi first, it meant that they had great confidence. Zhou Xuanji's frown became even deeper. How could he run away just like that? Han Shuzi had shown him too much kindness. He could not be so heartless and unscrupulous. At that moment, emissary Li Qing suddenly appeared. He said in a low voice, "The 2 of you come with me." After saying this, he waved his sleeve and used magic energy to forcefully sweep Zhou Xuanji and Shi Shinzong away. A green gust of wind quickly swept into the fog that covered the sky. Within the wind, Zhou Xuanji asked in a low voice, "Where are we going?" He swept his divine sense over emissary Li Qing. He still remembered the story of Sun Wukong defeating the White Bone Spirit 3 times. Could it be that this fellow was an enemy in disguise? Emissary Li Qing's expression was unsightly and he gritted his teeth as he said, "The Cliff Master ordered me to escape with you. The divine cliff is in danger. The one who came is called Malicious Buddha, and he is an undying old monster who has lived for millions of years. Even the Cliff Master is not a match for him. Damn it, why does such a person still exist? Malicious Buddha?" Zhou Xuanji and Shi Shinzong's expressions greatly fell. They had both heard of this name before. This person had once been a Buddha before falling into the demonic path. His strength was unparalleled and he had disappeared for hundreds of thousands of years. Most people thought that he was a fictional existence. Zhou Xuanji gripped his fists and asked, "What about the Cliff Master and the Divine Cliff? Will they be safe after I leave?" Emissary Li Qing did not reply, but his body slightly trembled. Evidently he was not very calm. Seeing this, Zhou Xuanji sighed. In the end it was he who had harmed the Divine Cliff. He could not understand. Why would an existence like Malicious Buddha target him and be jealous of his talent? Logically this should not be the case. After all, he was not the only first-class great emperor. There were 11 more first-class great emperors behind him. "Where are we going next?" Shi Shinzong asked. He did not let emissary Li Qing leave him behind and chose to follow Zhou Xuanji instead. He had promised to follow Zhou Xuanji so he could not go back on his word, even if the outcome was death. Emissary Li Qing looked into the distance and mumbled, "To seek refuge with the most powerful existence in the Center God province." "Oh," Shi Shinzong asked. Emissary Li Qing sighed, "Sovereign Xian. Shi Shinzong was stunned. Who was that? Zhou Xuanji's eyes widened, and he almost blurted out the name of a divine beast. Mobile version of the fastest updated website, M. It wasn't that he didn't want to fly, but there was an extremely powerful force restraining him. Zhou Xuanji and his companions' expressions changed. They took out their swords and prepared to fight. Where do you think you're going? The malicious Buddha's cold laughter came from all directions. Then the 8 malicious Buddhas walked out from different directions and stepped into the green wind. Zhou Xuanji and the other 2 were surrounded. Emissary Li Qing took a deep breath and asked, "Are you the malicious Buddha?" The malicious Buddha had rushed over. What did this mean? The divine cliff? He did not dare to imagine, and his heart was filled with terror. The malicious Buddha ignored him and looked at Zhou Xuanji. After sizing him up, he smiled in satisfaction and said, "You're indeed talented. You even control the Violet Demon Monarch's heart and the Tianxia map. No wonder the Demonic Emperor wants you so much." The Demonic Emperor. Shi Shinzong and Emissary Li Qing's expressions changed greatly. They had never expected the mastermind to be the Demonic Emperor. Theoretically, Zhou Xuanji should not be on the same side as the Demonic Emperor. Zhou Xuanji did not expect the malicious Buddha to be able to see through the Violet Demon Monarch's heart. Just how high was this fellow's cultivation? Shi Shinzong pointed his sword at the malicious Buddha and said in a low voice, "What do you want?" Just when he spoke, a malicious Buddha appeared behind him and grabbed his shoulder. He threw him out of the green wind and quickly disappeared. In front of the malicious Buddha, Shi Shinzong could not resist at all. Zhou Xuanji's expression sank. He was hesitating if he should use the all-evil yin-yang destruction. He could tell that the malicious Buddha did not want to kill him. Otherwise he would already be dead. Emissary Li Qing protected Zhou Xuanji and took a deep breath. "What benefits did the Demonic Emperor give you to Puchi?" A withered hand pierced through his chest and ripped out his heart. The hand crushed it, causing blood to splatter onto his clothes. Emissary Li Qing was stunned and looked at the hand in his chest in terror. In the next second, the malicious Buddha directly tore him apart. Blood splattered onto Zhou Xuanji's face, causing him to stand there dumbfounded, and his body slightly trembled. Another malicious Buddha grabbed Emissary Li Qing's soul. Zhou Xuanji looked closely. This is true power. No matter how peerless your talent is, you will still feel despair. The malicious Buddhas lightly laughed. Their laughter was incredibly terrifying and savage. Emissary Li Qing's soul was directly crushed by the malicious Buddha. His soul dissipated and he could no longer be reincarnated. Zhou Xuanji's pupils constricted and a terrifying aura exploded out, scattering the green wind around him. Just as he was about to take out the all-evil yin-yang destruction, a malicious Buddha appeared in front of him and grabbed his throat. Their eyes met, and Zhou Xuanji's eyes were filled with the malicious Buddha's savage face. Boom! A terrifying soul impact sent Zhou Xuanji's consciousness into an abyss, and he fell unconscious. The malicious Buddha grabbed him and coldly laughed as he said, "No matter how angry you are, it's useless. In front of absolute power, the weak have no hope." Under the azure sky, there was a boundless grassy plain. Zhou Xuanji lay on the grass as a light breeze blew past. He suddenly opened his eyes and sat up straight. He breathed deeply and instinctively looked around. "Where am I?" He looked around in confusion before examining his body. "You're going to die." A voice sounded out from behind him, causing him to look back in shock. He saw a man wearing tiger-patterned blood-red clothes standing behind him. His figure was tall and straight, blocking out the sunlight. He hurriedly stood up. This man was half a head taller than him and had broad shoulders. His black hair was slightly messy, and his eye sockets were very dark. His eyelids were sunken in and he had no eyeballs. Zhou Xuanji asked in a low voice, "Who are you?" The man in blood-red clothes calmly replied, "I'm the owner of the Tianxia map. You should have heard of my name. Gu Tianxia." Zhou Xuanji came back to his senses. Wasn't this the virtual world that he had entered when he first obtained the Tianxia map? Gu Tianxia walked to his side, raised his head and murmured, "The malicious Buddha is really a ruthless character. Even at my peak state, I am not even 1/10 of him." Zhou Xuanji frowned and asked, "If so, what's the point of seeing me?" From the looks of it, his physical body had already been imprisoned by the malicious Buddha. Gu Tianxia replied, "Our experiences are the same. We're both pawns of the great Emperor Dao Court's Xian Daoya. However, we can't just give up." Great Emperor Dao Court? What was that? Zhou Xuanji frowned even more. It was the first time he had heard of this name. The great Emperor Dao Court is a faction that was born at the beginning of the world. No one knows how many people are hidden within, and they are incredibly mysterious. Xian Daoya is one of them. Gu Qianxia said faintly, which made Zhou Xuanji even more confused. Why would such a powerful force hide in the dark? Mobile version of the fastest updated website. M. Chapter 442. Are you wondering why the great Emperor Dao Court is hiding in the dark? Gu Qianxia asked. Having heard him, Zhou Xuanji nodded lightly. Wasn't this guy blind? No, this was the virtual world. It didn't matter if he was blind or not. Gu Qianxia answered his own question. The great Emperor Dao Court is indeed powerful, but there are definitely powerful existences restricting them, just like the mysterious existences in the 33rd heaven and the ancient celestial race that disappeared a long time ago. Above the 33 heavens? Zhou Xuanji suddenly thought of Marquis. His original body was in closed-door cultivation there. According to what Marquis had said, there was a very powerful existence watching over them. Could that person be an existence that could resist the great Emperor Dao Court? He had heard of the ancient immortal clan. A true immortal god. It was acknowledged by the heavenly Tao. Malicious Buddha's mission is to deliver you to the demonic emperor, but Xian Daoya has been plotting against you and will not give up. There will definitely be a battle between the two of them, and that will be your chance. I will use the Qianxia map to teleport him out. As for where he will be teleported to, that will be up to the heavens. Gu Qianxia turned to Zhou Xuanji and said softly. He said it in a very relaxed manner. Zhou Xuanji asked, They are so powerful. Even if I escape, they will find me. Gu Qianxia replied, Being able to escape once is one thing. They are not omnipotent. The reason why they can find you is because everyone in the world knows that you are at the divine cliff. Zhou Xuanji came back to his senses. If the demonic emperor and malicious Buddha were that powerful, they would have found him long ago. There would have been no need for them to wait for so many years. Gu Qianxia opened his eyelids suddenly. His eyeballs were like two black holes and Zhou Xuanji's face twitched in fear. Xian Daoya nurtured me before, but he killed me when I wasn't paying attention. However, I left behind my eyes. If you can find them, you can revive me. I am filled with hatred towards Xian Daoya, so if you can revive me, I will never rest until Xian Daoya is dead. The pressure on you will also decrease. Gu Qianxia stared at Zhou Xuanji and said slowly. Zhou Xuanji was speechless. Why were they still thinking about reviving after dying? He couldn't help but recall the past. Were all the enemies he had killed really dead? All right, I hope that the next time we meet, I'll be alive to see you. Gu Qianxia said as he waved his hand. Without waiting for Zhou Xuanji's consent, he shattered the virtual world. Boom. Zhou Xuanji woke up as though he had just woken up from a dream. The firelight shone on his face. He found himself lying on the ground, surrounded by trees and a bright moon hanging in the night sky. He turned his head and saw malicious Buddha sitting not far away. His doppelgangers were no longer there. The malicious Buddha noticed that he had woken up, but he did not care. He held a piece of yellow skin in his hand and examined it carefully. Zhou Xuanji did not speak and silently sized up the malicious Buddha. This guy was really ugly. Thinking about emissary Li Qing's tragic death, Zhou Xuanji could not suppress the fury in his heart. One day he would make the malicious Buddha die a horrible death. You want to kill me? The malicious Buddha asked without even batting an eye. Zhou Xuanji did not reply. Even though he was furious, he was not stupid. Contradicting malicious Buddha now would only make him suffer. Malicious Buddha continued to stare at the yellow skin and said softly, I understand your feelings. In fact, I feel even more pain than you do. Do you know why I turned from a Buddha to a demon? It's because a Buddha can't change anything. He can't save others and he can't save himself either. If he becomes a demon, he will have nothing to fear. That's the strongest state. Zhou Xuanji snorted coldly. What villain doesn't have a reason? However, no reason is enough to stop you from taking revenge on the world. You're a sword cultivator, so if you become a demon, you will definitely be very powerful. I've seen a sword demon before, and that fellow was incredibly powerful. If he was still alive, he would definitely be one of the top 10 existences in the Great Thousand World, the malicious Buddha said as he continued to laugh. It was as if he had opened a chatterbox, and he began to speak endlessly, praising the sword demon. Zhou Xuanji did not want to become a demon. He had a wife and daughter as well as people he cared about, and he did not want to harm them. Looking at Devil Emperor Dugu, even though he usually looked like he had everything under control and was very gentle, after ascending he often became bedeviled. The malicious Buddha picked up the yellow skin and waved it at Zhou Xuanji as he smiled and said, "Do you know what this is?" Zhou Xuanji said grumpily, "Your bottom skin?" The malicious Buddha chuckled and said, "The skin of the ancient immortal clan. The ancient immortal clan are true immortal gods, and every piece of skin and hair contains the power of heavenly law. I'm researching why they are immortal gods." Zhou Xuanji frowned and asked, "You're so powerful, could it be that you're inferior to immortal gods?" The malicious Buddha loudly laughed, his tone filled with condescension. "The ancient immortal clan has already declined? I just want to research the power of heavenly law. Do you believe that someone can stand shoulder to shoulder with heavenly law?" His tone became fervent. "Stand shoulder to shoulder with heavenly law?" Zhou Xuanji casually replied, "Of course heavenly law is just a type of rule. When one is powerful enough to become a rule, that is the heavenly law. If one can surpass the rule, one can surpass heavenly law. However, there are many realms above heavenly law and they are endless." He had read many Xinxia novels in his previous life, and it was not difficult for him to make up a story. One of his favorite Xinxia novels was Wuxia. Back then, when he saw the main character reach the Saint Realm and stand shoulder to shoulder with heavenly law, he felt incredibly delighted. In the end, the Saint Realm was just the beginning and it was incredibly awesome. This was especially so when he saw the main character become a supreme heavenly emperor, transcending time and space and creating everything. He was incredibly impressed. Fortunately, that fellow had not transmigrated, or else, there were still ways to survive as a storyteller in the other world. Of course, it was impossible to become an immortal because the main characters that this fellow wrote were all very arrogant. Those with personalities would be beaten to death on the path of cultivation. The heavenly law is a rule. Malicious Buddha's eyes lit up, and he seemed to be lost in thought. He seemed to have thought of something but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Zhou Xuanji saw that there was hope. He immediately started talking nonsense. Tao can be Tao but it's not a Tao. Heaven is Tao, earth is Tao, Tao begets one, one begets two, two begets three, three begets all things. The malicious Buddha frowned but did not interrupt him. Zhou Xuanji bragged without thinking and he felt great about it. "How is it? Are you scared now?" Malicious Buddha said with a look of disdain, "What are you talking about? Are you trying to fool a child?" Zhou Xuanji was stunned. The Hegemon Sword Emperor was enlightened by these words, but this guy did not fall for it. He changed the topic and asked, "Where is the demonic emperor?" The malicious Buddha replied, "Somewhere very far away." "How far?" "Far beyond your imagination." "How far is that?" "I told you, you can't imagine it." "Then tell me." Malicious Buddha turned to look at Zhou Xuanji with a savage smile and killing intent. Zhou Xuanji kept his mouth shut. He prayed in his heart that Shen Daoya would come quickly. Only then would he be able to leave amidst the chaos. If Malicious Buddha found the demonic emperor, Shen Daoya would have no chance of winning. The night deepened. Flames flickered between the two of them, and Malicious Buddha turned his attention back to the yellow skin. The night passed. When the first ray of sunlight fell, Malicious Buddha still had no intention of getting up. Zhou Xuanji could not help but ask, "Why aren't you leaving?" Malicious Buddha said calmly, "Waiting for Shen Daoya." Zhou Xuanji frowned. This guy knew that Shen Daoya was coming? Chapter 443. Malicious Buddha said that he would wait for Shen Daoya, so he stopped. Zhou Xuanji did not know where he was and how far he was from the demonic emperor. He began to recover his magic energy. Malicious Buddha did not seal his cultivation. It seemed that this guy was really arrogant and was not afraid of him escaping. When it was close to noon, Malicious Buddha left with Zhou Xuanji. Along the way, Zhou Xuanji noticed that they did not fly very fast. This guy was still waiting for Shen Daoya. 3 days later, the two landed before a cliff. Malicious Buddha put him down and stood by the cliff without saying a word. Zhou Xuanji sat down and ignored him. An hour later. "Come out," Malicious Buddha said. "How long are you going to follow me? Are the people of the great Emperor Dao Court all scoundrels like you?" Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes. Finally, a gust of cold wind blew. The sky was cloudless and there was no one else in sight. TSK. Malicious Buddha, I didn't expect someone like you to become the demonic emperor's lackey. You said that your life is greater than the heavens and that your strength can surpass saints. What a joke. Shen Daoya's mocking laughter came, and the temperature in the surroundings plummeted. Zhou Xuanji remained calm and waited for the battle to begin. However, Emperor Zhao said that Shen Daoya was not powerful and might be suppressed by Malicious Buddha. Soon Shindeoya appeared on the opposite cliff and looked at Malicious Buddha. Their eyes met, and the corner of Malicious Buddha's mouth rose. Clones appeared out of nowhere and surrounded Shindeoya. Zhou Xuanji always felt that these clones were alive, like Malicious Buddha's twin brothers. Of course this was nonsense. How could Malicious Buddha's mother give birth to so many at once? Or maybe she was not human. Zhou Xuanji's imagination ran wild and made malicious guesses about Malicious Buddha. Malicious Buddha laughed coldly and said, Shindeoya, I advise you to leave the great Emperor Dao court. You work so hard for them but they never help you recover your body. You are not even recognized by the heavenly law. Why do you need to work so hard? You just don't understand, Shindeoya said calmly. Malicious Buddha pointed at Zhou Xuanji and said with a smile, You want to possess him? Back then you treated Gu Qianxia like this. But that brat is powerful and you are asking for trouble. Zhou Xuanji frowned. Shindeoya wants to possess me? He took a closer look and found that Shindeoya's expression was indeed a bit unnatural. Shindeoya pulled out a spine from his sleeve. It was white with many black lines. He held the long bone in his hand and waved it lightly. Black cyclones appeared out of thin air around him. Then countless skeletons rose up. There were human bones, demon bones, and even the skeletons of giants the size of mountains. A great battle was about to break out. Zhou Xuanji called out to Gu Qianxia in his mind. Unfortunately, Gu Qianxia did not answer. He was not worried. If Gu Qianxia wanted to live, he could only rely on him. The clones of the Malicious Buddha charged towards Shindeoya. Shindeoya disappeared into thin air, and the skeleton army that he summoned started fighting against the clones of the Malicious Buddha. Boom, 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 explosions rang out one after another and the cliff collapsed, sending dust and dirt flying everywhere. Zhou Xuanji quickly retreated far away from the battlefield. The Malicious Buddha did not follow him closely, as if he was not worried that he would escape. Shindeoya, do you think you can do whatever you want just because you're immortal? Today I will suppress you and let you have a taste of eternity of boredom and loneliness. The Malicious Buddha laughed wildly. He raised his arms horizontally, and two black orbs of light shot out from his palms. Lightning coiled around them, shaking the space. A violent gale blew and gathered around the black orbs, forming a powerful gale. Even though Zhou Xuanji was 1,000 meters away, his clothes were still fluttering in the wind. Still not escaping? Zhou Xuanji cried out in his heart. The Malicious Buddha was powerful indeed. Just his aura alone made him feel like his soul was about to leave his body. One must know that he was already an 8th Revolution Golden Immortal. It was hard to imagine how powerful the Malicious Buddha was. Shindeoya suddenly appeared above the Malicious Buddha's head. With the bone whip in his right hand, he lashed out with great force, causing the air to explode. The Malicious Buddha dodged it easily and swung his palms. The two black orbs exploded straight away, giving off a dazzling radiance that caused the heavens and earth to lose their colors. The two of them were engulfed by it. At this moment, Zhou Xuanji suddenly felt dizzy as though the world was spinning. The next second he lost consciousness. A shaking sensation woke Zhou Xuanji up, and he opened his eyes slowly. He was shocked to find himself lying in a prison cart. His white shirt was torn and covered in blood. His face was also covered in bloodstains. He wanted to move but found that he was powerless, and his magic energy was depleted. We can reach Lujiang City in another 800 miles. The Center God province is really chaotic recently. The Dao Heaven sect lord was severely injured, and the Divine Cliff suffered countless casualties. The Cliff Lord even died suddenly. I heard that it's all because of Zhou Xuanji. Who did Zhou Xuanji offend? This is the bane of Lone Star. Whoever gets close to him will be unlucky. The surrounding soldiers discussed among themselves as they moved forward. Zhou Xuanji frowned slightly and glanced at a beggar girl beside him. The girl was covered in dirt and gave off an indescribable stench. Her hair was a mess and she was sleeping at the corner of the prison cart. What's going on? Zhou Xuanji felt dizzy as though his head was going to explode. He began to heal himself. The soldiers noticed that he had woken up and began to tease him. At that moment, a general riding a tiger-patterned horse came near the prison cart and asked, "Tell me your name. Which sect are you from?" This general only had 6 tribulation scattered immortal cultivation. Because Zhou Xuanji was heavily injured and did not have any magic energy in his eyes, he was like a mortal and posed no threat at all. This prison cart was made of special wood and was extremely sturdy. There were restrictions within, and even great tribulation scattered immortals would find it difficult to break through. Zhou Xuanji replied, I'm called Zhou Minglang from the Heavenly Hall. I was attacked by enemies when I went out to train. Heavenly Hall. The general and soldiers' expressions slightly changed, but they did not panic. The Heavenly Hall was quite far away from here. They were not afraid of the Heavenly Hall. The general warned, I advise you not to think about escaping. The nearby area is filled with demons. If you run around with your current injuries, you will only die miserably. After saying this, he rode to the front of the group. Zhou Xuanji noticed that there were over 1,000 soldiers in the group, and there were close to 100 prison carts holding humans and demons. He wondered where these people wanted to take him. He was not afraid. Even though he did not have magic energy, he still had his legendary sword. He stealthily took out the ultimate grade beast bag and let Bai Suan out, allowing her to hide in his embrace. Bai Suan sent a telepathic message, I can't hold it in anymore. Her tone was filled with resentment. Zhou Xuanji had no choice. The divine cliff had been attacked, and he did not have much time to think. He could only forcefully put Bai Suan into the ultimate grade beast bag, and he did not have the opportunity to take her out again. He comforted her a little before continuing to heal himself. At that moment, the beggar girl who was in the same prison cart as him woke up. Seeing that Zhou Xuanji was healing himself, she was pleasantly surprised before feeling guilty. She said carefully, I'm sorry, I wanted to save you, but I did not expect to encounter people from the sovereign demon sect. Chapter 444. Thank you for saving me. You said that this is the territory of the sovereign demon sect? Can you tell me about it? Zhou Xuanji looked at the beggar girl and thanked her before asking. This girl was kind after all. How could he blame her? At the same time, he was shocked in his heart. The Qinsha map's movement was horrifying. Even someone as powerful as him felt as though his body was about to be torn apart. The beggar girl heaved a sigh of relief and said, This is the south of the Center God province, near the Cloud Devil Pool. Recently, for some reason, the demon race outside the Center God province began to invade. The sovereign demon sect is fighting against them, and we will be captured as slaves to dig spirit stones and treasures for them. Zhou Xuanji nodded and began thinking. From today onwards, he would be hunted down by the demonic emperor and the great emperor Dao Court. He would remember what happened to the divine cliff and seek revenge in the future. But the most important thing now was to figure out what to do next. His initial goal after ascending was to cultivate hard and reach the true God stage as soon as possible before returning to protect the northern wilderness region. But now he had become a stray dog. The world was so vast, but where should he go? His only advantage was that his fate was unpredictable, so his enemies could not divine him. Forget it. Just like before, he would find a secluded place to cultivate and search for the whereabouts of the 18 divine swords. He sighed. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. Whenever he thought about emissary Li Qing and Han Shuzi, he could not control the murderous intent in his heart. Ever since he came to the northern wilderness region, the Divine Cliff was the first faction that treated him well. Tanhua sect did not count, it was only forced by Xian Xianghua. He thought about Xian Xianghua again. He did not know where that old demonic woman was and whether she was safe. Seeing that Zhou Xuanji was depressed, the beggar girl blamed herself even more. She came to Zhou Xuanji's side and comforted him softly, I will surely save you. Let me heal you. After that, she stretched out her right hand and pressed on Zhou Xuanji's palm. In that instant, a wave of coolness seeped into Zhou Xuanji's body, making him feel refreshed. He looked at her in astonishment. Because there were too many people around, it was not convenient for him to take out the Holy Light Redemption Sword. He did not expect this girl to know healing techniques. However, this technique's healing ability was not very powerful. It was considered a divine technique for those below the spirit refinement stage. Zhou Xuanji asked, You have such a technique, so why are you in such dire straits? If she opened a clinic, she wouldn't be so poor. The beggar girl whispered, I'm protecting myself. You can call me Little Chan. She sounded a little excited. Judging from Zhou Xuanji's tone, it was evident that he did not reject her. She began to make small calculations. It was difficult for a person to survive alone. She wanted to rope Zhou Xuanji in and make him her subordinate. This way she would have someone to protect her. The more she thought about it, the happier she became. Zhou Xuanji was confused by her passionate attitude, but he did not say much. Then he shut his mouth and focused on his cultivation. Xiao Chan didn't disturb him. As he cultivated, he paid attention to the conversation of the soldiers. 10 days had passed since the attack on the Divine Cliff, and this matter had shaken the Center God province. Even overlord forces like the Divine Cliff and the Tao Heaven sect had been attacked one after another. If it had been any other force, would they have been flattened in a short period of time? Panic spread throughout the Center God province. All the cultivators were discussing who had attacked the Divine Cliff and the Tao Heaven sect. After Zhou Xuanji heard about the Divine Cliff situation, he felt even worse. The team continued to trek across mountains and rivers. The reason why they didn't fly was because they wanted to capture more slaves along the way. Zhou Xuanji saw the demons as well. Those demons looked like humans but were not. They had the characteristics of other living creatures, and the demonic chi surrounding them was visible to the naked eye. At the same cultivation stage, demons were generally more powerful than humans. Moreover, they were violent and could hardly control their emotions just like wild beasts. A day later, Zhou Xuanji was prepared to leave. He got up slowly and took out the Holy Light Redemption Sword. He held it in a backhand grip and the blade cut his arm. He looked down at Xiao Chan and asked, "Do you want to come with me?" Xiao Chan, who was half asleep, rubbed her eyes and mumbled, "What are you thinking about? You should be the one coming with me." Boom! The 9-flame chimera demon sword appeared beside Zhou Xuanji suddenly. A horrifying energy exploded and destroyed the prison carriage. Xiao Chan was so shocked that she lost her sleepiness immediately. She was sent flying away by the 9-flame chimera demon's energy. Fortunately, the sky-dominating divine sword appeared behind her in time and caught her with its blade. Zhou Xuanji stood on the windcutter sword, and numerous legendary swords appeared around him. He ignored the terrified soldiers and flew toward a certain direction on the River of Swords. Xiao Chan was sucked by the sky-dominating divine sword and followed closely behind him. "Stop!" The leading general cried out and charged toward Zhou Xuanji with his saber drawn. The Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss turned around and slashed. Countless evil ghosts charged out, and the general was so frightened that he turned around and ran. Xiao Chan opened her eyes wide. Seeing those evil ghosts, she was dumbfounded. Could Zhou Xuanji be a demon? Her expression turned into despair. After flying for 6 hours, Zhou Xuanji stopped in a bamboo forest. He began cultivating with the Holy Light Redemption Sword in hand. The Ghost Emperor Extreme Abyss and 9-flame Chimera Demon Sword landed beside him to protect him. He stored the other legendary swords into the Supreme Storage. After Xiao Chan landed, she kept her distance from Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji said without opening his eyes, "You can leave now. Head east and there's a city 300 miles away." Xiao Chan was stunned and fell into a dilemma. Although Zhou Xuanji did not look like a kind person, if she left Zhou Xuanji she might be captured by the sovereign demon sect and become a slave again. "Can I stay?" "I can be your maidservant," she said carefully. Zhou Xuanji said without hesitation, "Impossible. We don't owe each other anything. It's time for you to leave." Xiao Chan's cultivation was too weak, and her healing spells were not enough. She would only be a burden if he kept her by his side. Next, he planned to find a place to continue his closed-door cultivation and break through to 10th Revolution Golden Immortal as soon as possible. Xiao Chan said anxiously, "Bring me along. Although I'm not powerful enough, I know the southern region of the Center God province very well. You will surely need my help in some way." Zhou Xuanji frowned and did not reply immediately. Xiao Chan sat down obediently and did not dare to disturb him. 3 days later, Zhou Xuanji's injuries were completely healed. His soul was not injured, and the injuries on his body did not spread to his inner pellet and astral infant. He left with Xiao Chan. He flew at full speed all the way and finally found a forest with relatively abundant spiritual qi. He used the divine sword to open up a cave and used a sealing technique to seal the entrance of the cave. He let Bai Suan out and said, "The two of you stay in the cave and cultivate. Before I come out from my closed-door cultivation, don't go out." Xiao Chan heard him and looked a little bitter. Closed-door cultivation? How long would that take? Zhou Xuanji ignored her and sat down immediately. He took out the Tao Fetus Red Loath Pearl and continued his cultivation. To prevent any accidents, he took out the ancient god sword and placed it beside him. Although the 9 souls did not come out, they could communicate with him spiritually. He told the 9 souls about what happened during this period of time. Emperor Zhao was amazed and said, "How pathetic. Brother, let me revive. If I revive, I will fight for the position of the sovereign demon sect lord. At that time, I will help you hide the news so that you can hide in peace. At the same time, I will help you find the whereabouts of the 18 divine swords." Come. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 445. Hearing Emperor Zhao's suggestion, Zhou Xuanji asked in his heart, "How can I help you revive?" Emperor Zhao fell silent. Saber Monarch Dong Hai sneered, "Gu Tianxia left his eyes as a medium, but what about you? The Eternal Emperor is nothing more than this." Emperor Zhao was furious and he started bickering with Saber Monarch Dong Hai. Zhou Xuanji then asked Sovereign Xian how he died. Venerable Xian hesitated for a while before saying, "I want to know how strong the heavenly Tao is. I flew to the 36th heaven and was destroyed by the heavenly Tao." Zhou Xuanji was stunned, and the other 8 souls also fell silent. What an embarrassing way to die. "So you're committing suicide?" Emperor Zhao sighed, his tone filled with mockery. In any case, they had no other choice. Venerable Xian was digging his own grave. However, this also proved that Xianzun was very strong. Otherwise, why would he challenge the heavenly path? Tao Lord Shen asked, "Your name has Shen in it. Have you heard of me?" Sovereign Xian asked, "Who are you?" Tao Lord Shen fell silent. Zhou Xuanji conversed with them as he absorbed the Tao fetus red loath pearl spirit qi. Xiao Chan chatted with Bai Suan. Both of them were girls, so it was easy for them to get along. Lu Wuji's voice sounded in Zhou Xuanji's mind, "Your current situation is indeed troublesome, but it is not hopeless. Magistrate Cui is right, you should go and find the 18 divine swords. Although malicious Buddha is powerful, he is still a demon and does not dare to get close to the divine swords. The demonic emperor did not act personally, so there must be a reason. As for the other experts of the great Emperor Tao court, there are ways to deal with them. There are many people like you, such as Devil Emperor Dugu, Marquis Great Emperor Wuwang, and many others. You can think of a way to draw out some of the hidden geniuses or revive us. Our revival will be able to draw the attention of the great Emperor Tao court and the demonic emperor." Although his words were filled with selfishness, they were indeed reasonable. Zhou Xuanji still had another question. "The demonic emperor should be your junior. Why is he so powerful that the malicious Buddha is willing to serve him?" Lu Wuji replied, "He became a devil. No one knows exactly why. Becoming a demon." Zhou Xuanji suddenly thought of the malicious Buddha's words. Becoming a demon would make one stronger? Why didn't the sovereign demon sect and the demon race dominate the great thousand world? He couldn't figure it out, so he stopped thinking about it. For the next period of time, malicious Buddha and Shen Daoya did not come again. At first, Zhou Xuanji was a little worried, but he soon calmed down. It seemed like Shen Daoya couldn't calculate his whereabouts and could only rely on asking around. 1.5 years later, Zhou Xuanji turned 100 years old. Analyzed that the sword owner has reached 100 years old. Gotcha started. Ding. Congratulations, the sword owner has obtained Armageddon, Holy Light Divine Shadow Sword, Heavenly Soul, Chaotic God Demon Seeking Sword, Sword Sect Immortal Ghost Weep. Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes and joy flashed in his eyes. His 100th birthday was indeed incredible, directly giving him a world-destroying godly sword. Information about the 2 swords appeared before his eyes. Sword name, Holy Light Divine Shadow Sword grade, Armageddon, description, the Sword of Holy Light. When the sword is drawn, divine shadows will dance between the heavens and earth. It possesses the power to destroy the world and can create extreme illusions in battle. Only golden immortals and above can use it. Sword name, Chaotic God Demon Seeking Sword level, Heavenly Soul description. This sword was forged by the will of the gods and demons. Those who are not mentally strong should not use it. Sword of Holy Light? Could it be a series? Zhou Xuanji thought of the Holy Light Redemption Sword and took it out. A dazzling radiance appeared and illuminated the entire cave. Xiao Chan and Bai Suan turned around in shock. It was a sword of light. The blade was very wide and it was 1.5 meters long. He could feel the warmth of the sword in his hand. He waved the sword gently and the sword chi swept out, directly colliding with the wall. A crack appeared and the whole mountain trembled. Zhou Xuanji quickly stored the sword. Facing Xiao Chan and Bai Suan's gazes, he closed his eyes straightaway and did not explain. Xiao Chan already knew Zhou Xuanji's identity. Even with Zhou Xuanji's warning, Bai Suan still spilled the beans. Ever since she knew about this, Xiao Chan was dead set on Zhou Xuanji. The Sword Emperor is indeed the Sword Emperor. Even a random sword is so cool, she praised. It was a pity that her flattery was not reciprocated. Zhou Xuanji began to receive Sword Sect Immortal Ghost Weep. When he finished the inheritance, he became excited. This sword technique could become his most powerful sword technique. More accurately, it would be his most powerful divine ability. He used his soul power to control his sword so that they could attack the enemies near him. The range was controlled by him, and with the help of the heavenly law's celestial power, each sword would radiate with a celestial radiance. Heavenly law's celestial power. He immediately got up and left to cultivate this divine ability. Xiao Chan and Bai Suwen's eyes brightened and followed him. After staying in this cave for a year and a half, they were almost suffocated. In the forest, Zhou Xuanji took out all his legendary swords and began practicing. Don't go too far away. If you expose yourself, I will abandon you without hesitation because you are seeking death. Zhou Xuanji warned, which frightened Xiao Chan so much that she stuck out her tongue. Bai Suwen, on the other hand, did not care at all. Sword Sect Immortal Cry was a divine ability without any sword moves. After he inherited the qi circulation technique and the method to mobilize the heavenly law's celestial power, he quickly learned it. At first he controlled 10 swords. After the heavenly law's celestial power was injected into them, each of them glowed with a silver radiance and circled around him at high speed. With a thought, the legendary sword slashed toward a small mountain. With a loud boom, the small mountain was pulverized. Since he mastered the 10,000 Sword Dragon incantation, it was not difficult for him to learn Sword Sect Immortal Cry. However, the heavenly law's celestial power was extremely domineering. It was even more powerful than the world's energy. He could not control the legendary swords precisely. 10 days later, Zhou Xuanji completely mastered Sword Sect Immortal Cry. He captured Xiao Chan and Bai Suwen and returned to the cave to continue cultivating. Half a year later he successfully broke through to 9th Revolution Golden Immortal. 2 years later he broke through to 10th Revolution Golden Immortal. The Tao Fetus Red Loath Pearl was completely absorbed and turned into dust. The further he progressed, the faster he absorbed. He felt that it had something to do with the heavenly law's celestial power. Ever since he learned Sword Sect Immortal Cry, his cultivation grew faster and faster. In 2.5 years he obtained 3 legendary swords. They were the Tridao Sword, Caged Wolf Sword, and Pampas Sword. All of them were amethyst. Apparently, the Armageddon Legendary Sword and Sword Sect Immortal Cry had used up all his luck. After the breakthrough, Zhou Xuanji felt refreshed and left with Xiao Chan and Bai Suwen. Where are we going next? Xiao Chan asked curiously. She looked back at the cave, which was the place where she stayed for 4 years. In these 4 years she had maintained the appearance of a beggar. Although she washed her face and body, revealing her delicate and pretty face, Zhou Xuanji did not give her new clothes, which made her quite depressed. Her storage ring had long been taken away by the Sovereign Demon Sect's demonic disciples. Zhou Xuanji looked at the horizon and said, "Search for the 18 divine swords." As a 10th Revolution Golden Immortal, he felt that he was comparable to a Void Extreme Immortal. But compared to the malicious Buddha he was still far from it. "I know a place. There's an old immortal who has lived for countless years. He lives in seclusion in the mountains. He might know the whereabouts of the 18 divine swords." Xiao Chan said excitedly. Having heard her, Zhou Xuanji took out the truth sword and placed it on her shoulder. The blade grazed her skin lightly. "Come. Wonderful book house." Chapter 446. Xiao Chan was stunned. A slight pain came from her right shoulder, and her eyes turned red immediately as though she was about to cry. "You don't believe me?" she asked, biting her lip lightly. Zhou Xuanji said calmly, "Is what you said true? What is the background of that old immortal?" Xiao Chan felt extremely wronged, which turned into anger. "Of course it's true. What good do I get from harming you? No one knows the background of that old immortal. He saved me when I was in danger and taught me cultivation. He is a man of virtue and will never harm anyone." Zhou Xuanji stored the truth sword and said with a smile, "I'm just teasing you." Xiao Chan was still angry. She looked at Zhou Xuanji with grievance and anger in her eyes, as though she was about to cry at any moment. Bai Suwen flew to her shoulder and said with a smile, "He's worried that you will be bewitched by powerful enemies with divine abilities. Do you know how powerful the enemies he is facing are? They can kill someone from thousands of miles away. The grand teacher who nurtured him since he was young was the reincarnation of the enemy's soul. That grand teacher raised his mother, which means that he started to scheme from birth." Xiao Chan heard her and opened her eyes wide. She shuddered in fear. She looked at Zhou Xuanji with pity in her eyes. Zhou Xuanji did not explain but asked her to lead the way. He flew on his sword with Xiao Chan in front of him. He held her shoulder while Bai Suwen looked around in his arms. Along the way they often saw battles. The Sovereign Demon Sect and the demons fought everywhere. They captured civilians and made life difficult for them. There were mortals in the Great Thousand World, but their physiques were generally stronger than those in the mortal realm. The time when the demons attacked the Center God province was very close to the time when Zhou Xuanji's identity was exposed. He had to think about it. 4 days later, they flew out of the sovereign demon sect's territory. In the Center God province, there was only one sovereign power, and that was the Great Heaven God dynasty. Under the Great Heaven God dynasty, there were no other empires or kingdoms. It was a great crime to establish a dynasty without permission. The Great Heaven God dynasty had vast influence. In terms of territory, it was definitely the largest in the Center God province. However, the mortal realm was not under their control but was controlled by sects and clans. No one knew the name of the old immortal that Xiao Chan mentioned. He was in the forest south of the Great Heaven God dynasty. The place was filled with miasma, but the demons were generally weak. They were probably afraid of him. Zhou Xuanji walked carefully and avoided contact with any strangers, including demons. Along the way, he sent Bai Suwen to the cities to gather information. After malicious Buddha attacked the Divine Cliff, he did not reappear, and the Divine Cliff and Tao Heaven sect regained their peace. The world continued to spin, but the Divine Cliff was greatly weakened and was suppressed by the surrounding factions. Zhou Xuanji wanted to help, but he could not. What was worth mentioning was that Shi Shenzong had not died. He had helped the Divine Cliff before, but he had been encountered by the Hegemon Sword Emperor and taken away. There were too many things to do in the Center God province, and the northern wilderness region was too small compared to it. The information that Bai Suwen could gather was limited. Zhou Xuanji suddenly felt the need to create an intelligence organization that was hidden in the dark. One day he suddenly stopped, because he sensed a familiar aura. Bai Hao Yisin. With a flash of inspiration, he immediately followed the aura and rushed over. 100 kilometers away on a hill, Bai Hao Yisin lay down in satisfaction. There were 6 flirtatious women sitting beside him, laughing and chatting happily. Zhou Xuanji landed on the summit suddenly. He hid his aura with the qi obscuring incantation, but Bai Hao Yisin could sense Bai Suwen and Xiao Chan's auras. The enchanting fragrance of a young girl. Bai Hao Yisin looked up in fascination and saw Zhou Xuanji. He was so shocked that he jumped up immediately, causing the women to scream. He looked at Zhou Xuanji warily and said with a low voice, "Brat, why are you here?" He cursed in his heart. His luck was too bad. It was not easy for him to sneak out to have fun without Feng Yul nagging him. And now he encountered this little fiend. "Where's Feng Yul?" Zhou Xuanji asked with a smile. Bai Hao Yisin curled his lip and said, "He's cultivating with this emperor's revered teacher." "What? Aren't you afraid that this emperor's revered teacher will discover you? He really wants to deal with you." He glanced at Xiao Chan and Bai Suwen and sighed in his heart. This brat was so lucky. Especially that little white snake. He immediately guessed that it was the 9 Heaven Divine Snake. When she transformed, she would definitely be devastatingly beautiful. After the 9 Heaven Divine Snake transformed, she would be handsome and beautiful. Just thinking about it made him excited. Zhou Xuanji's heart trembled. Bai Hao Yisin's revered teacher? His expression did not change as he said, "Bai Hao Yisin, we have no enmity. Why don't we work together?" "Work together?" Bai Hao Yisin straightened his back immediately and said proudly, "Why should this emperor work together with you?" Zhou Xuanji said with squinted eyes, "There must be a reason for you to descend to the mortal realm. But you suffered so much in the mortal realm. Evidently, someone is plotting against you. If we work together in secret, we will still be enemies. But secretly, we can exchange information and help each other." Bai Hao Yisin heard him and was infuriated. He thought of Shen Daoya. That old bastard. Actually, back at Juedi Cliff, he was already convinced by Zhou Xuanji. He admired Zhou Xuanji's courage and righteousness. It was not bad to work together with this brat. As for his revered teacher? How could he defeat Zhou Xuanji in his current state? Bai Hao Yisin looked at the beauties beside him and said, "Wait for this emperor in the forest." The beauties curled their lips and left reluctantly. Zhou Xuanji also sent Xiao Chan and Bai Suwen away to show his sincerity. The two walked up to each other and did not put up their guard. Zhou Xuanji spoke first. "You and I are both from the northern wilderness and we get along so well. Let me talk about my current enemies first." He mentioned Shen Daoya, the demonic emperor, and the malicious Buddha. When he heard about Shen Daoya, Bai Hao Yisin opened his eyes wide and almost cursed it out. That old bastard again. After Zhou Xuanji finished speaking, Bai Hao Yisin harumphed and said, "Sure. This emperor wants to deal with Shen Daoya too." Zhou Xuanji told him about his plan again. He also promised to bring in Emperor Zhao, Gu Tianxia, Devil Emperor Dugu, Lu Wuji, Marquis, and the others to form a powerful secret faction that could fight against the great Emperor Dao Court. In this faction, they would be on equal footing and would not have to risk their lives for each other. They would help each other if they could, but they could not hide any information. Bai Hao Yisin was shocked and said in astonishment, Emperor Zhao, Gu Tianxia, Lu Wuji, Saber Monarch Dong Hai, Demon Lord Ryuan, Emperor Hanlin, Emperor Songhai, and Ghost Emperor Zhang Tian, aren't they all dead? Zhou Xuanji smiled mysteriously. The world also thinks that the malicious Buddha doesn't exist. Bai Hao Yisin fell silent. After that, the two promised each other the first information mission. Zhou Xuanji would help Bai Hao Yisin keep an eye on Shen Daoya, while he would help Zhou Xuanji investigate the 18 divine swords. After chatting, Zhou Xuanji left. Bai Hao Yisin stood where he was. His expression became calm and was no longer as frivolous as before. His eyes sparkled as he mumbled, Zhou Xuanji, very good. I hope you won't disappoint me. Today's conversation gave him a deeper understanding of Zhou Xuanji. It was too difficult to think of this guy. On the other side, Xiao Chan and Bai Suan asked who Bai Hao Yisin was. Zhou Xuanji snorted coldly, don't ask what you shouldn't ask or else I will silence you. Mobile version of the fastest updated website, M. Chapter 447. After encountering Bai Hao Yisin, Zhou Xuanji and the other two continued toward the old immortal. A month later, they finally arrived at their destination. The three landed and looked toward the direction where they were looking. The undulating mountain range was shrouded in dense fog. From afar it looked mysterious and beautiful. Xiao Chan said, let's walk over quietly. The old immortal likes peace and does not like to be disturbed. Zhou Xuanji nodded and followed her with Bai Suan. Half an hour later, the three of them arrived in front of a Taoist temple. This Taoist temple was not big, with vegetables, flowers, and fruits planted on both sides. A cat as fat as a pig was lying on the ground, napping, and a strange sandalwood fragrance wafted out from the Taoist temple. Xiao Chan walked to the gate and said respectfully, Old Immortal, I'm back. She had been with the old immortal for decades and had always respected him. Come in. A benevolent and old voice came. Next, the gate of the Taoist temple opened abruptly, which frightened the fat cat. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow slightly. This voice made his heart shudder. He began to look forward to it. It seemed that this old immortal had a profound cultivation. After entering the temple, Zhou Xuanji finally saw the old immortal. He wore a white robe and looked like an immortal. He sat on a cattail hassock with his eyes closed and a horsetail whisk in his hand. Looking at him, Zhou Xuanji thought of Tai Chi Yudao somehow. Xiao Chan giggled, Old immortal, I brought two friends here. You won't mind, right? I owe him my life. The old immortal opened his eyes and smiled, it's okay. I'm also interested in the sword Emperor Zhou Xuanji, who has shaken the world recently. With this, Zhou Xuanji and Xiao Chan's expressions changed. The old immortal glanced at Bai Suan and said with a smile, You received the help of the 9-heaven divine snake right after you ascended. My little friend Xuanji, your luck is much higher than those before you. Zhou Xuanji now believed that this old immortal was not simple. He might not be any weaker than Han Shuzi. He cupped his fist and asked, Old immortal, you know my identity, but do you know my background? The old immortal nodded and said, The 18 divine swords are not easy to find. Only one has seen the light of day in the Center God province. It's controlled by a powerful cultivator who is on par with the malicious Buddha. I advise you to give up. On par with the malicious Buddha? Zhou Xuanji cursed in his heart. Where did so many powerful cultivators come from? The old immortal said leisurely, I understand your predicament. You only need to stay here for 3 years and this situation will be resolved. From then on, you will be able to fly as high as a bird and roam the world. Although there will not be any danger, at least the demonic emperor and great emperor Dao Court will not cause trouble for you. Xiao Chan and Bai Suan were pleasantly surprised. Zhou Xuanji was quite curious and asked, Can old immortal explain? If it could really be solved, then there was no need to rush to find the 18 divine swords. The old immortal shook his head and said, The vegetables in the garden are ripe. Help me pick them. With that, he closed his eyes and said no more. Zhou Xuanji frowned but did not say anything. He turned around and left. Xiao Chan bowed and left the Taoist temple. The doors of the Taoist temple were closed as if they were rejecting guests. As Zhou Xuanji cut vegetables, he took out the ancient god sword. He pretended that he was cutting vegetables, but he was actually communicating with the 9 souls. Yo yo yo, brother Zhou is getting worse by the day. Emperor Zhao added insult to injury, which made Zhou Xuanji roll his eyes. He repeated the old immortal's words and wanted to see how the 9 souls would guess. Lu Wuji said, so it's him. Listen to him. No one dares to hurt you here. Emperor Hanlin sighed in amazement. Your luck? I'm impressed. Zhou Xuanji heard him and quickly asked about the old immortal's identity, but the 9 souls did not reply. He could only stay patiently. After he finished harvesting the vegetables, the old immortal asked Xiao Chan to bring him into the temple. He asked Zhou Xuanji to find a place to cultivate and wait for the 3 years to pass. This place was quite peaceful. Although the spiritual qi was not abundant, it was not bad either. It was suitable for cultivation. He focused on Sword Sect Immortal Ghost Weep. The celestial power of the heavenly law was powerful, but other than using this divine ability, it was difficult for him to activate it directly. It was a strange feeling. He had already grasped the technique, but he could not control it. Time passed quickly. A year later, above the 33rd heaven, the great Emperor's steel trembled and 2 men in black appeared before it. A name appeared on the 10th place, pushing Zhou Xuanji down to the 13th place. Emperor Jundao. Emperor Jundao. 10th on the great Emperor's steel. How can it be? Another first-class great emperor. How long has it been since Zhou Xuanji appeared? This is too horrifying. What's going on in this era? The 2 men in black cried out in shock. Shortly after, they disappeared before the great Emperor's steel. Within 7 days, Emperor Juandao's name resounded across the world. A genius who was even more overpowered than Zhou Xuanji appeared out of nowhere. At this moment, the entire world was discussing this person. Emperor Jundao? Such a domineering name. Could he have ascended from the mortal realm too? No, he must be a genius nurtured by some overlord-level faction. Yeah, how can there be so many geniuses in the mortal realm? Tiske. Now that Zhou Xuanji is nowhere to be found, what will happen to this Emperor Jundao be? Another first-class great emperor. Such a commotion was just like Zhou Xuanji's, but even more so because Zhou Xuanji was ahead of him. Zhou Xuanji flew on his sword and returned to the old immortal's temple. He had been frowning. Every 2 months he would go to the nearby cities to gather information. Naturally, he knew about Emperor Juandao's situation. He was not jealous of Emperor Jundao but pondered over the old immortal's words. Could this be the solution he was talking about? Emperor Juandao's ranking was higher than his. How could the great Emperor Dao Court, demonic emperor, and malicious Buddha not pay attention to him? However, the old immortal did not summon him, so he continued to cultivate. If he was too anxious, he would lose face instead. There were still 2 years left of the 3-year deadline, so he continued to wait. Half a year later, Emperor Jundao joined the Great Heaven God dynasty and became the emperor's confidant. He was high-spirited and looked down on all the heroes in the world. He did not even take Zhou Xuanji seriously. He claimed that he would surpass his predecessors and help the Great Heaven God dynasty become the overlord of the Great Thousand World. With this, rumors spread all over the world. Zhou Xuanji also heard about this. He was not angry but happy. Continue to be arrogant and do not stop. In the next year, just as the world expected, the Great Heaven God dynasty was attacked continuously. If not for the emperor's power, Emperor Jundao might have followed in Zhou Xuanji's footsteps. The Great Heaven God dynasty had no choice but to be more vigilant, and Emperor Jundao also began to cultivate in seclusion. What's worth mentioning is that the attacks of the demon race are getting stronger and stronger. The sovereign demon sect is starting to feel like they can't hold on anymore. Not only that, the demon race in the north is also getting restless. There was still half a year before the 3 years that the old immortal had mentioned. Zhou Xuanji felt that it was not enough. Monarch Jundao alone was not enough to resolve his crisis. Emperor Jundao? This kid is so arrogant. It seems like he has been spoiled. His master must have a profound background. Emperor Zhao muttered in Zhou Xuanji's mind. The other great being souls also guessed the same. If he came from the mortal realm and experienced countless hardships, how could he dare to be so arrogant? Come. Wonderful bookstore. Com. Chapter 448. Emperor Zhao, have you thought of a way to revive yourself? Zhou Xuanji asked in his heart as he looked at the fat cat not far away. This guy was lying on his back, basking in the sun. His bulging belly was exposed like a ball, making him want to step on it. Emperor Zhao said disappointedly, how can I? I am too young. I never thought that I would die. If he were to be revived, he would surely be more arrogant than Emperor Jundao. Zhou Xuanji nodded and did not speak further. He continued to sense the heavenly law's celestial power. A few days ago he reached 105 years old. 2.5 years passed. He obtained 6 legendary swords. They were the Evil Trust Sword, Saint Thief Sword, White Wall Sword, Phoenix Arching Sword, Shaoshen Sword, and Thorny Fish Sword. The highest was Heavenly Soul, which was not of much help to him. He had a deeper understanding of the heavenly law's celestial power, but he could not refine it as he pleased. As for cultivation, he fell behind. No matter how talented he was, it was too difficult to break through to void extreme immortal through cultivation. Without any special serendipity, he might need to cultivate for thousands of years or even tens of thousands of years to succeed. Which void extreme immortal in the Great Thousand World was not tens of thousands of years old? The Hegemon Sword Emperor was close to 20,000 years old. He only broke through early because of special serendipity and made a name for himself in the Center God Province. Half a year later, if what the old immortal said was true, then he would need to search for the 18 divine swords in Xian Xianghua. Xiao Chan walked over quickly with a Ganoderma in her hand. This Ganoderma should have been nurtured for 10,000 years. It's filled with spiritual qi. Take it. She looked proud as though she was asking him to praise her. Zhou Xuanji nodded slightly before taking the Ganoderma and examining it carefully. Xiao Chan did not receive any compliments, so she curled her lip and left with a low snort. When she passed by the fat cat, she kicked its stomach. Meow! The fat cat cried out miserably and ran into the forest, twisting its butt. Zhou Xuanji laughed and stored the Ganoderma into the supreme storage before continuing to cultivate. 3 months later, a majestic voice resounded across the Center God Province. The Center God Province is the center of the Great Thousand World. Order is in chaos and evil demons roam freely. I decided to lead the immortal gods to regain order in the Center God Province. Evil demons shall not disturb us. 100 years later, I will open a preaching hall in the 9th heaven. All living beings in the world can come and listen to my teachings. Boom. The Center God Province was in an uproar as countless exclamations sounded. Zhou Xuanji, who was cultivating, opened his eyes, and a brilliant light flashed in his eyes. Here it comes. Was this the opportunity that old immortal had mentioned? That person was from the ancient immortal clan? He even had to preach the Tao. Zhou Xuanji immediately took out the ancient god sword and communicated with the 9 souls. The ancient celestial races also have heavenly saints? It shouldn't be. F***CK brat, your luck is too heaven-defying. You actually encountered the arrival of an almighty being. Since he dares to call himself a saint, he must be a heavenly saint. He even subdued an ancient celestial race. This is incredible. Malicious Buddha and Xian Daoya will not dare to enter the Center God Province again. What realm is heavenly sage? Interesting. I didn't expect the heavenly saints to really exist. Heavenly saint. Zhou Xuanji felt quite curious and asked Sovereign Xian what a heavenly saint was. However, Sovereign Xian refused to tell him and said that if he leaked information about a heavenly saint, he would be punished by the heavens. After chatting with the 9 souls for a while, he could no longer sit still. He stood up and walked to the front of the Taoist temple. He respectfully asked, "Senior, is this the opportunity you mentioned to break out of this situation?" He suddenly felt as though the clouds had parted and he could see the sun again. Felt so good. The 3-year deadline is not up yet. The demons might be hoping for luck. Let's wait a little longer. The old immortal's voice came from the temple. It was very calm and no one could tell from his emotions. Zhou Xuanji understood this. How did you know that the heavenly saint was coming? He asked curiously. The old immortal could divine this. Could he be a heavenly saint too? Zhou Xuanji was filled with respect at the thought of this. You know about the heavenly saint? It seems like your sword is not simple indeed. The old immortal said with a faint smile, which made Zhou Xuanji sweat profusely. Since the old immortal was unwilling to speak, Zhou Xuanji did not dare to disturb him. He returned to his original spot and continued to comprehend the heavenly law's celestial power. At this moment, the old immortal appeared behind him suddenly. Looking at the sky, he said softly, "Look at how vast this world is. An immortal lives in the sky. What does that mean?" Zhou Xuanji was shocked. He instinctively wanted to stand up, but a formless force pressed down on him and prevented him from doing so. He calmed himself down and began to ponder about the old immortal's words. The old immortal was definitely not chatting casually. There must be a deeper meaning. Immortals live in the sky. His pupils shrank and his breathing quickened as he asked, "You mean the heavenly law's immortal force needs to be extracted from the sky?" The old immortal lowered his head and smiled amiably at him. Not only are you talented, but you are also open-minded. Not bad, being able to comprehend the heavenly laws immortal energy at the revolution golden immortal realm. Since ancient times, there have not been many people with such talent. You must have learned some kind of divine art. I won't ask who taught it to you, but I hope that you will remember this. The heavenly laws immortal energy is still the heavenly laws immortal energy. Don't be greedy or you will dig your own grave. After that he turned around and walked into the forest. As he walked, he shook his head and said, "Heaven doesn't see the birth of all living things. My Tao came from the heavens." If we were to talk about who is the leader since ancient times, the heavenly saints, Buddhas, and demons are all conceded. Zhou Xuanji remembered this sentence and leaped up into the clouds. He sat down cross-legged and began to comprehend the heavenly law's celestial power. After a while, strands of heavenly law celestial energy descended from the sky and poured into his body, causing him to be wild with joy. He tried to continue flying and he discovered that the higher he flew, the more heavenly law immortal power he sensed. Soon an invisible barrier blocked his path. He looked up. The sky was still too high to reach, but he could not go any higher. 3 heavens. 33 heavens. Each heaven had a heavenly law restriction. With Zhou Xuanji's power he could break through the first heaven. But after some thought he decided to give up. The 3-month deadline was not over yet. He could not be reckless. He began to extract heavenly law celestial power. His goal was to change the magic energy in the Qianxia map into heavenly law celestial power. Heavenly law celestial power was more powerful than the power of the world. If he could use heavenly law celestial power as his normal battle power, his power would be explosive. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became. In the dim world, lightning flashed and thunder roared. A lone peak stood in the middle of a massive lake, and the surrounding lake water surged like raging waves. A group of blood bats flew over and landed on the peak. There was a stone palace here, and an old tree stood in front of it, enduring the wind and rain. Xiao Hongjun walked up to the door of the stone palace and shouted, "Wuang, get out here now. The heavenly saint is here and you still want to wait for your death?" Wuang, the peerless demon emperor from the northern wilderness region 110,000 years ago. He almost led the demon race to rule over the northern wilderness region. "You can leave by yourself. I have my own ways." Great Emperor Wuang's indifferent voice came, which infuriated Xiao Hongjun. She came to visit him out of goodwill, but he did not even open the door. She gritted her teeth and said, "The violet demon monarch's heart that you left in the mortal realm has been taken away by someone. It might be Zhou Xuanji. Let's go and take revenge." In the northern wilderness region, there were only a handful of people who had the ability to take the violet demon monarch's heart. The most likely one was Zhou Xuanji. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 449. Knowing that the violet demon monarch's heart had been snatched away, Great Emperor Wuang did not get angry. Instead he remained silent. Xiao Hongjun could not take it anymore and said angrily, "Do you despise me that much? Come out and meet me. Do you want to die?" Emperor Wuang remained silent. Xiao Hongjun was so angry that she swung her palm at the door of the stone hall. The door shook violently, but she could not break it open. After venting for a while, Xiao Hongjun left angrily. After a long while, Emperor Wuang's voice floated out. "It looks like I really should leave. What a pity that I can't participate in such an exciting era." 3 years had finally passed. Zhou Xuanji absorbed a lot of heavenly law celestial power, and his power grew tremendously. He came before the Taoist temple and asked, "Senior, is the Center God province safer than before? Will the great Emperor Tao Court and demonic emperor come back?" The old immortal's voice sounded, "If you can break through the barrier with the northern wilderness region, then go ahead and do it. Next will be the era of hundreds of clans competing. It's a rare opportunity to become a saint, so make good use of it." Zhou Xuanji took a deep breath and bowed toward the Taoist temple. In a sense, this old immortal could be considered half a master to him. He called Bai Suan and prepared to leave. Xiao Chan followed up and shouted, "Don't think of leaving me behind." Now she had changed into a clean white dress. Although she was not devastatingly beautiful, her appearance could be considered pretty, especially her temperament, which was youthful and lively like a child. Zhou Xuanji asked, "Isn't it better to stay here? It's dangerous to follow me." Xiao Chan curled her lips and said, "I want to. Old immortal chased me away 30 years ago. If it wasn't for you, how would I have the face to come back?" Zhou Xuanji heard him and could only give up. In the future she would be a maidservant. Next, Zhou Xuanji prepared to find the divine cliff and help it recover. He then found a mountain to establish Emperor Sword Court's base in the Great Thousand World. It was not difficult to find a Dharma formation that connected to the mortal world. There was definitely one in the divine cliff. Now that the heavenly sage was in control of the Tao, it was time for the Emperor Sword Court to ascend. Zhou Xuanji suddenly felt that he was no longer important. If he had come 10 years later, would the heavenly saint have come on time? Would the divine cliff be able to escape this calamity? He shook his head. Everything had its own destiny. There were no ifs. From then on, he would see himself as a member of the divine cliff. As he strengthened the Emperor Sword Court, he would also support the divine cliff. All the way forward. Zhou Xuanji stopped occasionally to inquire about the whereabouts of the 18 divine swords. As long as it's not a true god, I will kill him. Yang Yuqian frowned and said, cultivate well. If there's anything you need, we will help you. The divine cliff needs your help, but not now. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and said, if we don't act now, the divine cliff will only be bullied more and more. Since the calamity has only passed for a few years, we must show our might. All the demons were chased out of the Center God province. Under such circumstances, we should be like our predecessors and show our might. The all-evil yin-yang destruction and the holy light divine shadow sword appeared behind him at the same time, spinning in the air. Two extremely powerful auras exploded out, shaking the Cliff Lord Palace violently. All the disciples in the divine Cliff City felt their hearts tremble. Yang Yuqian and the others opened their eyes wide and looked at the two Armageddon legendary swords in disbelief. Such a powerful divine weapon. Elder Yuchuan, bring him to the teleportation point of the Wangwei realm. If a true god attacks, I will do it myself. Yang Yuqian instructed with a deep voice, and an elder beside him agreed immediately. Zhou Xuanji pointed at Xiao Chan and said, she's my maidservant. She saved my life before. Arrange for her to stay in my residence. After that, he handed Bai Suwen to Xiao Chan before leaving with Elder Yuchuan. Looking at his back, Yang Yuqian clenched his fists and his blood boiled. Revered teacher, the divine cliff will not fall because of this. We will surely soar. He mumbled to himself before arranging a place for Xiao Chan to stay. To the north of the divine cliff, above the boundless fog and layers of clouds, hundreds of powerful cultivators sat in the air, surrounding a long bridge. There was a teleportation gate on the bridge, which was guarded by two void extreme immortals. They were chatting and laughing. The divine cliff has really fallen. Our sect doesn't even need to send out true gods, and they still don't dare to act. Of course. Although Yang Yuqian is powerful, he belongs to the younger generation after all. If he were to act against us, the other sects and clans would take the opportunity to act. He has no choice but to compromise. At this moment, more than 10 top-tier factions were watching the divine cliff. Each faction had a true god. They were waiting for Yang Yuqian to come alone and kill him. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 450. The faction that occupied the Wangwei realm was called the Eight-Fist Sect, and it had a few true gods. Before, they were so insignificant before the divine cliff. But now they worked together with other factions and treated the divine cliff as their prey. The two void extreme immortals and hundreds of golden immortals dared to occupy this place. This showed how much they despised the divine cliff. They were not afraid of Yang Yuqian because many powerful cultivators were waiting in the dark. The divine cliff was like a huge cake. First come, first served. Humph. A cold snort came. Zhou Xuanji came over on a river of swords with the all-evil yin-yang destruction in his right hand and the holy light divine shadow sword in his left. His black robe danced in the wind, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. Elder Yuchuan was beside him and looked excited. I can finally fight back. Seeing Zhou Xuanji, all the Eight-Fist Sect cultivators got up and prepared for battle. The two void extreme immortals smiled in disdain. Zhou Xuanji said coldly, all of you come here and die. Don't touch the portal. With this, the Eight-Fist Sect cultivators took out their enchanted artifacts and looked at Zhou Xuanji furiously. A void extreme immortal laughed in disdain. A 10th revolution golden immortal dares to be so arrogant? Do you think you can do whatever you want just because you have a senior beside you? After that, he charged toward Zhou Xuanji first, followed by the other cultivators. Just when Elder Yuchuan was about to attack, Zhou Xuanji activated the world-destroying power of the all-evil yin-yang destruction and slashed with the sky-dominating divine sword soul. Boom! The sword flashed and everyone closed their eyes instinctively. The Void Extreme Immortal opened his eyes wide and slammed his palm. Shortly after, he and the Golden Immortal behind him were turned into ashes. The clouds were destroyed, and the sword chi swept across and disappeared into the horizon in the blink of an eye. Silence. Elder Yuchuan was dumbfounded. The surviving cultivators from the Eight-Fist sect were all stunned. Deathly silence. Brat. You are seeking death. The other Void Extreme Immortal from the Eight-Fist sect roared furiously. He disappeared on the spot and wanted to sneak up on Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji stomped his right foot, and 30 legendary swords soared up. They glowed with silver radiance and revolved around him at high speed. Elder Yuchuan sensed an extremely powerful repulsive force coming toward him. He immediately recognized that it was Zhou Xuanji's power. He did not resist and moved a few hundred meters away from Zhou Xuanji. The Void Extreme Immortal suddenly appeared behind Zhou Xuanji with a snake-like black sword in his hand. He was going to kill Zhou Xuanji with one slash. Puchi. 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 Silver light flashed and he was instantly pierced by 30 divine swords. He was like a hedgehog and blood sprayed across the sky. Zhou Xuanji did not look back but looked at the cultivators from the Eight-Fist sect. His gaze scared the cultivators so much that they broke out in cold sweat and retreated one after another. How is this possible? The Void Extreme Immortal of the Eight-Fist sect was drenched in cold sweat. He had a ferocious look on his face. He wanted to bring down the black sword, but it was a pity that his magic power was being sucked away rapidly. The Heavenly Law's immortal energy was of a higher grade than his magic energy. He was completely defenseless against it. The 30 divine swords moved again and directly minced him into pieces, turning him into a bloody mist. The two Void Extreme Celestials were as weak as mortals in front of him. With the two Armageddon legendary swords and Sword Sect Immortal Ghost Weep, he could kill enemies of a higher stage. With his cultivation stage, 2 slashes could exhaust the Heavenly Law's immortal energy in his body. But he still had the Tianxia map, which stored abundant Heavenly Law's immortal energy. It was enough for him to fight for a long time. He charged toward the other cultivators from the Eight-Fist sect and started a massacre. The cultivators were so terrified that they fled in all directions. Elder Yuchuan was stupefied and could not come back to his senses for a long while. Why was a 10th Revolution Golden Immortal so powerful? He could not understand at all. Could this be the heaven-defying power of a first-class great emperor? No wonder those factions were willing to heavily injure the Divine Cliff and Dao Heaven sect just to kill Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji, you still dare to show up? A loud cry came. A 3,000-meter tall silhouette appeared in the horizon and charged toward Zhou Xuanji swiftly, stirring up clouds and mist. Heavenly Law True God. The stage above Void Extreme Immortal. Elder Yuchuan was only a Void Extreme Immortal. If not for the Divine Cliff being heavily injured, he would not have become an elder. Seeing the true God, his face turned pale with fright. Zhou Xuanji did not panic at all. He activated the Emperor's Way Thousand-Hand Sword Buddha straightaway. Stepping on the Sword Buddha's head, he flew up swiftly. He laughed proudly and said, "A mere true God dares to kill me? Even the malicious Buddha cannot kill me, let alone you. If you dare to attack me, the existence behind me will not let you off. Neither will the malicious Buddha. The malicious Buddha and the demonic Emperor still want to use me. Do you have the right to stand against them?" The true God was so frightened that he stopped in his tracks. His body was glowing with a radiance and no one could see his expression clearly. But he had to believe Zhou Xuanji's words. Even Han Shuzi died in the hands of the malicious Buddha. How could Zhou Xuanji survive? Zhou Xuanji snorted coldly, "If you don't get lost, you and those scoundrels hiding in the dark will all die." He was filled with a murderous aura and released all of his aura, looking fearless. This made the Eight-Fist sect's true God even more uncertain. Zhou Xuanji swung his sword. The sky-dominating divine sword Soul and Sword Chi swept out and clashed with the Eight-Fist sect's true God. The true God exploded instantly without causing any damage. He was shocked in his heart. A Heavenly Law true God was this powerful? Zhou Xuanji, you win. The Eight-Fist sect's true God snorted coldly and left. As for the other Eight-Fist sect cultivators, they were long gone. The Eight-Fist sect retreated. At the same time, the true gods hiding in the dark were also shocked. It was not that they were not smart enough, but the malicious Buddha's deterrence was too powerful. Even someone as powerful as Han Shuzi was killed. How could they fight against him? Elder Yuchuan came up to Zhou Xuanji excitedly. He wanted to say something but Zhou Xuanji gave him a look and he understood immediately. The two returned to the Cliff Lord Palace and told Yang Yuqian about this. Yang Yuqian sighed in amazement. A 10th Revolution Golden Immortal can kill 2 Void Extreme Immortals and hundreds of Heavenly Revolution Golden Immortals so easily. This is too ridiculous. Not only that, but you also know how to bully others. I can sense that those true gods have retreated. I don't think the other factions need us to do anything. They will be scared away. Bully others? Zhou Xuanji was speechless. How could he say that? Next, Yang Yuqian began gathering the core disciples to conquer the portals to the mortal realm. Zhou Xuanji told him about the northern wilderness region, and Yang Yuqian readily agreed. Emperor Sword Court was merely a faction in the northern wilderness region, and it was not a big deal for them to merge with the Divine Cliff. However, the Divine Cliff had been attacked, so they needed to create a new teleportation gate and buy world stones, which would take some time. Zhou Xuanji also asked Yang Yuqian about the 18 divine swords in Xian Xianghua, and Yang Yuqian readily agreed. That day, news of Zhou Xuanji's return spread throughout the Divine Cliff City. At first, the disciples were quite furious, but after hearing that Zhou Xuanji had repelled the various factions, their anger dissipated. Along the way, Zhou Xuanji sensed many hostile gazes. He was not angry. If it were him, he would feel displeased as well. Under Elder Yu Quan's lead, he returned to his original residence, which had yet to be destroyed. Fei Hai stood in front of the gate excitedly. When he saw Zhou Xuanji, he cried tears of joy and said with a trembling voice, "Senior, it's great that you are all right. You're finally back." Mobile version of the fastest updated website. M. Chapter 451. Seeing that Fei Hai was safe and sound, Zhou Xuanji was not pleasantly surprised but felt a little amazed. Several years had passed and the people had changed. He then thought of Han Shuzi and Shi Shenzong. He nodded and said, "Get up. The Divine Cliff is in trouble. You don't have to serve me anymore. Cultivate well and become the backbone of the Divine Cliff." Fei Hai shook his head and said, "I can still serve you and I will not delay my cultivation." Zhou Xuanji did not insist and walked into the residence. The servants in the mansion were still there. It was still the same people. Zhou Xuanji packed up and flew into the sky to continue extracting heavenly law celestial power. When he attacked the true god just now, he didn't manage to inflict any damage to the other party, causing him to feel a sense of crisis once more. He needed to accumulate more heavenly law immortal energy. In the next half a year, Zhou Xuanji did not leave the Divine Cliff City, and news of him returning to the Divine Cliff quickly spread. The demons were chased out, and Emperor Jundao was once again active in the eyes of the world. Now Zhou Xuanji had also returned. Would the two newly advanced first-grade great sovereigns fight? In half a year, the Divine Cliff did not encounter any more attacks. Yang Yuqian continued to recruit disciples. Analyzed that the sword owner has reached 106 years old. Gotcha started. Ding. Congratulations, sword owner, you have obtained Intimidating Spirit, Bitter Sword, 9 Sun Spirit Source Crown. Zhou Xuanji, who was high up in the sky, was attracted by the sword spirit's voice. He opened his eyes, and the legendary sword's information appeared before him. Sword name, Ku Ti Sword Grade, Intimidating Spirit, Description, a wooden sword that contains Bodhi materials. Anyone struck by this sword will suffer the pain of being stabbed by thousands of blades and being devoured by hundreds of beasts. Not bad. Zhou Xuanji smiled and took out the 9 Sun Spirit Source Crown. The crown was golden in color and was 10 centimeters tall. 9 golden dragons were engraved on its surface, and they were very small. There were 3 golden needles attached to it, which could be used to tie one's hair. 9 Sun Spirit Source Crown, not only can it increase the speed at which the host refines his magic power, it can also absorb the power of the sun. When it encounters a fatal attack, it will automatically counterattack the enemy. The sword spirit introduced and Zhou Xuanji immediately put it on. After wearing the crown, his entire temperament suddenly changed, becoming even more divine and handsome. He continued to refine the heavenly law immortal energy and found that the rate at which he could refine it had indeed increased by a lot. Not bad. Zhou Xuanji's mood became joyful. At this moment, Yang Yuqian transmitted a message to him, telling him to head to the Cliff Master Hall. He quickly arrived at the entrance of the Cliff Master Hall and strolled in. Apart from Yang Yuqian, his previous direct disciples Wuxia and Lan Xiangying were also present. Zhou Xuanji asked curiously, "You're still alive?" He thought the two of them were already dead. Hearing this, Lan Xiangying coldly harumphed, while Wuxia enthusiastically waved at him and revealed a bright smile. Yang Yuqian laughed loudly and then closed the door. I called you here because I have the whereabouts of the divine sword. The location is a little far, so I want junior brother and junior sister to accompany you. I have to watch over the divine cliff. I hope you can understand. Yang Yuqian said. Zhou Xuanji heard him and his eyes brightened. He said, I can go alone. Leave them here to guard the divine cliff. Lan Xiangying curled her lips and said, Are you afraid that we will snatch them from you? Wu Qiu shook his head and said with a smile, That place is an ancient site that the two of us discovered in the past. There are many restrictions inside and many of our disciples died there. If we bring you there it will save you a lot of trouble. Besides, don't you need someone to keep watch when you're retrieving the sacred sword? Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, Then I will trouble the two of you. But since you have been there before, why didn't you find the sacred sword? Could it be that something had happened? Wu Qiu stopped smiling and said, That ancient site is at the western end of the Center God province. 3 months ago, my informant there sent me a message saying that the Heavenly Hall and the Buddha Ghost sect discovered the ancient site. It was said that they forced the birth of a powerful sword. Even a 9th Revolution Golden Immortal could not control this sword. I guess that the sword might be the divine sword. Now that the immortal gods control the Center God province, evil cultivators are no longer around. Why don't we go and take a look? Zhou Xuanji was a little disappointed. So it was not accurate information. Wait, the Buddha Ghost sect is not an evil cultivator? He asked curiously. Yang Yuqian replied, Although they are ghost cultivators, the Buddha Ghost Emperor made great contributions to protect his descendants. The heavenly law recognizes them, and the immortal gods do not reject them. After that, the four of them discussed and decided to depart today. Zhou Xuanji, Wu Qiu, and Lan Xiangying went back to make some arrangements before leaving the divine cliff together. Bai Suwen and Xiao Chan wanted to follow but were rejected by Zhou Xuanji. This was a risky trip and he did not want to bring along two burdens. Lan Xiangying flew on a cloud, while Zhou Xuanji sat on the cloud and continued to extract heavenly law celestial power. Wu Qiu cultivated as well. Because he was close, he could sense the powerful ripples of heavenly law celestial power. He opened his eyes and asked in astonishment, There's something wrong with your magic energy. Why does it feel like an immortal god? Zhou Xuanji glanced at him and asked, You've seen an immortal god before? Wu Qiu nodded and began to tell him about his past. Back then he was only a 9th tribulation scattered immortal. When he was traveling in the Center God province, he encountered an injured immortal. After saving the immortal they became friends and spent some time together. He was very familiar with heavenly law celestial power. After that they parted ways. Until today Wu Qiu did not know where that immortal was, nor did he know why he was injured. Zhou Xuanji thought to himself and said, That heavenly saint brought an immortal god to control the Center God province. What's his intention? Could it be related to your immortal friend's injury? In the Center God province, immortal gods were still an illusory legend. Zhou Xuanji knew that the immortal gods came from the ancient immortal clans. This time, it was all thanks to the heavenly saint and the ancient immortal clans that he was able to escape. However, he always felt that there was a massive conspiracy behind this. If the immortal gods were so kind, they would have appeared long ago. Wu Qiu did not reply. He was also thinking about this. Ever since he witnessed the malicious Buddha's prowess, he had a strong desire for power. This time he not only wanted to help Zhou Xuanji obtain the divine sword but also to obtain a serendipity for himself. Under the dark clouds, the entire mountain was filled with graves. There were countless of them. Behind a tombstone, a hand suddenly reached out from the soil. It was as dry as firewood and looked eerie. The soil opened up and a skinny man climbed up. His clothes were corroded and only strips of cloth were left. His hair was dry and his eyes were lifeless. He rolled down from the soil and lay on the ground, panting heavily. He glanced over and saw the words on the tombstone. My brother M.O. The last 4 words were corroded by the wind and sand, but the 3 words at the bottom were still recognizable. Established by Emperor Xia. The skinny man stood up with difficulty and looked up at the dark clouds in the sky, trembling. Suddenly he burst out laughing like a madman. Ha ha, I'm alive again. All of you wait for your deaths. I'm going to regain control of the Center God province. I'm the true sovereign. He laughed wildly. Strands of black chi floated out from the other tombstones and gathered on his body. His body grew fuller at a speed visible to the naked eye. Chapter 452. The historical site that Wuxia was talking about was called the Nether Demon Stream. It was said that a long time ago, the demon race had once occupied the Center God province. The Nether Demon Stream was one of the demon race's territories, but it was destroyed by a powerhouse. It took a long time to travel from the Divine Cliff to the Nether Demon Stream. Along the way, Zhou Xuanji and the others did not encounter any danger. After the heavenly saints spoke, the demons all disappeared. The only strange thing was that the heavenly saints and immortal gods had not appeared yet. If not for the fact that some demon factions had been razed to the ground, the world would have thought that the immortal gods were joking. Zhou Xuanji asked Wuxia to help him find out where Xian Xianghua was, and Wuxia asked about her. Demonic cultivator? She might have already left the Center God province, Wuxia said with a frown. Wuxia frowned, which made Zhou Xuanji's heart sink. Lan Xiangying said, "There are no more demonic cultivators in the Center God province." Zhou Xuanji frowned and thought to himself. He was not too worried. Xian Xianghua had lived for over 10,000 years after all, and she was proficient in the celestial devil rebirth technique. She should be able to protect herself. Half a month later, the three of them were less than 10,000 kilometers away from the Nether Demon Stream. Lan Xiangying stopped and landed on top of a mountain. Wuxia moved his hands and golden mirrors of light flew out from his sleeves and hovered in front of them. The mirrors reflected the scene of the Nether Demon Stream from a different perspective. The surrounding 10,000 kilometers was a boundless mountain forest. Mountain ranges rose and fell, and the Nether Demon Stream was like a black line that divided the land into two. It was so deep that they could not see the bottom. They saw many cultivators moving about, and some even flew into the Nether Demon Stream. There were also people fighting. Wuxia coldly laughed and said, "It's so lively." Zhou Xuanji asked, "Are there any true gods here?" Wuxia shook his head and said, "The demonic factions in the Center God province have all retreated. The true gods of the various factions are busy fighting for territory. How can they have the time to come to the Nether Demon Stream?" Zhou Xuanji heard him and felt that it made sense. The serendipity in the Nether Demon Stream was not worth mentioning to true gods. As for that saint sword, he had not verified whether it was real or not. Since there are no true gods, should we act directly? Zhou Xuanji asked. He could already rival Void Extreme Immortals, and Lan Xiangying and Wuxia were both Void Extreme Immortals. With the three of them working together, there was naturally nothing to fear. Wuxia raised his hand and said, "Don't be anxious, I think I saw someone from the Tang King clan." Tang King clan. We're all remnant souls, don't act cool. There are holy swords here? It's possible that the 18 holy swords have disappeared for countless years, so they might have fallen in a place like this. The 9 souls started to bicker. Some of them had been here before, which made things much more convenient for Zhou Xuanji. Wuxia and Lan Xiangying continuously avoided the restrictions, and Zhou Xuanji would occasionally warn them, making them feel quite shocked. "You've been here before?" Wuxia could not help but ask. Zhou Xuanji could find restrictions that they did not know about. This was quite embarrassing. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and said, "I just have good eyesight." These words made Wuxia feel even more depressed. Soon they encountered a group of cultivators. They immediately hid behind a massive boulder, concealing themselves, and their auras almost disappeared. "The Tang King clan is too domineering. Despicable. Is that sword really a holy sword? Feels so strange." "The Tang King clan's Tang Jueqin has come. Let's leave." Tang Jueqin is a second-class great emperor, and now that he is a Void Extreme Immortal, his strength is enough to sweep across the Void Extreme Immortal realm. All of us together are not a match for him. Hearing the cultivators' discussions, Wuxia and Lan Xiangying's expressions slightly changed. After the group of cultivators flew away, Wuxia gritted his teeth and said, "Tang Jueqin has also come. This is not good news. Tang Jueqin is one of the top geniuses in the Tang King clan. Even if all of us combined, we are not a match for him." Zhou Xuanji raised his eyebrows and asked, "Aren't you all geniuses of the Divine Cliff as well? Why are you so lacking in confidence?" Wuxia rolled his eyes at him. Lan Xiangying explained, "Tang Jueqin has a great emperor divine weapon and is extremely powerful. In the Great Thousand World, enchanted artifacts and magic treasures were not divided into many grades, but great emperor divine weapons reigned above most enchanted artifacts and magic treasures. Great Emperor divine weapons were forged by heavenly law great emperors using great emperor fate. Once they were formed, they would be incredibly powerful and contain emperor's might." Zhou Xuanji's eyes narrowed as he said, "I'll go and meet him." He now had 2 Armageddon-grade swords. He wanted to see which one was stronger compared to the Great Emperor Divine Weapon. After saying this, he prepared to rush out. Wuxia held him back and said in a low voice, "Right now, the Divine Cliff is not on the same level as the Tang King clan at all. We can't fight them head-on. We need a plan to steal the Saint Sword without anyone knowing." Zhou Xuanji frowned. The strength of their faction was a big problem. He did not want to make more trouble for the Divine Cliff. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 453. In the depths of the Nether Demon Stream, there was a large door at the bottom of a mountain. Even though it was incredibly damaged, the palace inside still existed. The palace was very big and was guarded by 30 Tang King clan disciples. Tang Juetian was standing in front of a stone coffin. He wore a large blue robe and had a cold expression. His gaze was sharp and he looked like a spear, giving off a powerful aura. Following his gaze, there was a stone sword within the coffin. This stone sword was 1 meter long and 10 or so centimeters wide, and it was elongated like a gourd. There was an eyeball between the hilt and the blade which looked like a human eye. It was still spinning as if it was looking around, looking incredibly shocking. Tang Juetian muttered, "Is it really a saint's sword?" A voice sounded in his heart, tempting him to grab the sword, but his heart was as firm as a boulder and did not move. At that moment, a disciple walked 10 steps away and cupped his fists as he called out, "Young master, the great heaven god dynasty's Lu Tingjun is here." Lu Tingjun. Before Emperor Jundao appeared, he was the #1 genius of the great heaven god dynasty. He had reached void extreme immortal at 8,000 years old, and he was now over 10,000 years old. Tang Juetian's eyes narrowed as he said, "Who would have thought that he would also come? That's good, we haven't decided a victor in our battle last time." He turned and walked towards the door as he said, "No one gets close to the stone coffin. That sword is an evil sword and can bewitch people's hearts. If anyone grabs it, their soul will be devoured." Hearing this, the 30 Tang King clan disciples were given a big fright. They were all from the same clan, and they believed that Tang Juetian would not lie to them. After all, Tang Juetian had not touched that sword at all. Soon Tang Juetian left. Not long after he left, Zhou Xuanji and the others came over. Zhou Xuanji and the other 2 came over and looked into the distance. They could see that there were cultivators guarding the door. Wuxia said, "Lan Shangying, you go and draw away a wave of enemies. I'll act and draw away another wave. After that, Brother Xuanji can go and take the sword." Lan Shangying nodded and did not say anything as he quickly raised his sword and rushed out. These Tang King clan disciples were only golden immortals. Even though the weakest was at least 7th revolution, how could they be a match for Lan Shangying? Lan Shangying quickly grabbed a female disciple and said with a sneer, "Tang King clan is only SOSO." With that, she snatched the female disciple away. Immediately, 8 male disciples roared and chased after her. "Stop! Release my cousin. Where did this demoness come from? Does she want to offend the Tang King clan?" Damn it. The light underground was dim, and they couldn't see Lan Shangying's face clearly. After they left, Wuxia charged out and used the same method to attract the 7 disciples. There were only 13 disciples left in the palace. Zhou Xuanji put on his iron mask and charged forward with the soft velvety sword. He first absorbed all of the disciples' magic power, then stabbed them with his sword, causing them to fall to the ground powerlessly. In order to avoid falling out with the Tang King clan, he didn't take their lives. The Tang King clan was considered to be on the righteous path, but in the future if they were to argue, their skills would be inferior and they would not have the face to speak. Soon, the 13 Tang King clan disciples powerlessly fell to the ground, looking at Zhou Xuanji furiously. They didn't even have the strength to speak. Zhou Xuanji came up to the stone coffin and glanced at the stone sword. "This is the holy sword? Why is it so strange?" Zhou Xuanji looked at the eye on the stone sword in confusion. He did not immediately stretch out his hand and instead started to converse with the 9 souls. Lu Wuji said in a low voice, "It shouldn't be a holy sword, I can sense soul ripples from within the sword." Could it be that there was an old demon hiding in the sword that pretended to be a holy sword to take over? Zhou Xuanji raised the ancient god sword and slashed out. Clang. The stone sword shattered and the eye's pupils constricted. It no longer spun around and even lost its expression. Zhou Xuanji's expression was calm, but the 9 souls exploded. Emperor Zhao cried out in shock, "My big brother, you killed it just like that? You haven't investigated it clearly yet." The other souls could not understand either. They had come from so far away, even if it wasn't a holy sword, it was still a gain. Zhou Xuanji said casually, apart from holy swords, I don't need any other swords. He now had close to 200 swords and did not need to worry about swords. After the stone sword shattered, there were no abnormal signs. Everything seemed incredibly calm. Zhou Xuanji stared at the eye and thought to himself. He suddenly stretched out his hand and used heavenly law immortal energy to dig out the eye from the air. He directly put the eye into the supreme storage. He had asked the sword spirit before, and if evil things entered the supreme storage they would be suppressed. Of course the supreme storage would reject living things. This eye was not alive. After doing all of this, Zhou Xuanji quickly left. He quickly found Wuxia and Lan Xiangying. The two of them let go of the Tang King clan disciples, and the three of them quickly disappeared into the darkness. The Tang King clan disciples understood that this was a ploy to lure them away, so they did not give chase and returned to the palace. When they saw the stone sword shatter they were all dumbfounded. Zhou Xuanji and the others landed behind a massive boulder. Wuxia asked about the situation and Zhou Xuanji answered truthfully. After hearing that he had destroyed the stone sword with a single strike, Wuxia said in pity, looks like it's not a holy sword, how could a true holy sword be so weak? Lan Xiangying nodded, they had come here for nothing. They started to plan their return. Zhou Xuanji said, I want to challenge Tang Juetian. We'll only fight to determine victory and defeat, not to kill him. That shouldn't give the Tang King clan an excuse to attack, right? Wuqia's eyes widened as he said, are you crazy? Tang Juetian, who had a great emperor divine weapon, was someone that even he could not deal with. Did Zhou Xuanji really want to lose? Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, if the divine cliff wants to rise up, it needs fame. If I defeat Tang Juetian, will more people want to join the divine cliff? Lan Xiangying rolled her eyes at him and asked, what if you lose? Zhou Xuanji said confidently, I won't lose. He wanted to test his true strength. Wuxia and Lan Xiangying could not dissuade him, so they could only allow him to challenge Tang Juetian. The two of them did not follow in case they were recognized by the Tang King clan disciples. Zhou Xuanji took out legendary swords which formed a river of swords. He stepped on the river and rose into the air, looking incredibly domineering. Seeing this, Wuxia and Lan Xiangying looked at each other and could see the shock in each other's eyes. What a powerful aura. On the ground, Tang Juetian was currently fighting with the great heaven god dynasty's Lu Tingjun. The two of them had powerful auras and were incredibly fast. They were like two rays of light madly clashing in the air, causing powerful gales to blow up the trees in the surrounding 1,000 kilometers. Many cultivators watched from afar. So powerful. Both of them are second-class great emperors. It's said that they fought before but there was no clear victor. Ever since Emperor Jundao joined the great heaven god dynasty, Lu Tingjun has been overlooked. I never thought that he would be so powerful. Their strength is quite strong even among void extreme immortals. Looks like there's no hope for the Saint Sword now. The Heavenly Palace's people were also watching. Emperor Yan of Zhou looked at this incomparable battle, a look of admiration on his face. If he was this powerful he would not have to work so hard for the Heavenly Palace. He suddenly thought of his son Zhou Xuanji. He wondered what that boy's strength was now. His smile became bitter. They were father and son, but there was a gap between them that was even deeper than enemies. Come. Wonderful book house. Chapter 454. Tang Juetian continuously struck out with his palms. The wind from his palms was so strong that Lu Tingjun was unable to get close. Lu Tingjun was wearing black armor and a red cloak. He looked valiant and domineering. He held a red tasseled spear in his hand. The spear's blade was wide and rectangular. His expression was resolute. He held the long spear in his right hand and stabbed repeatedly. His left hand formed hand seals and cast different spells. Wind could increase his speed, water and fire could increase his power, and lightning was even more domineering. Tang Juetian didn't even take out his divine weapon, and easily received all of his attacks. Lu Tingjun, my cultivation base has improved but you haven't. You are no longer a match for me. Tang Juetian laughed proudly, filled with confidence. In the past he and Lu Tingjun were on the same level but now he had already left Lu Tingjun behind. Lu Tingjun was indifferent. His eyes were burning and his aura gradually increased. Right now he was in a very awkward situation. The favoritism he received from the great heaven god dynasty had decreased because of Emperor Jundao, and his reputation in the world had also been overshadowed by Emperor Jundao. Now that he was facing Tang Juetian, he was actually unable to gain the upper hand. Bang! An extremely powerful aura came from the horizon. Countless sword shadows turned into a desolate mountain and river, rushing over with unstoppable force. Tang Juetian and Lu Tingjun subconsciously turned around to block. Countless sword shadows collided with them, bursting forth with dazzling light. Everyone looked over and saw Zhou Xuanji walking over on a river of swords. He had changed into white clothes and was not wearing the iron mask. The all-evil yin-yang destruction and the holy light godly shadow sword in his hands caused gusts of wind to swirl around him. The people from the heavenly palace were all moved. Zhou Xuanji's face had long since spread throughout the heavenly palace, and Emperor Yan of Zhou felt as if he had been struck by lightning. "Who are you?" Tang Juetian shouted loudly as he frowned. The sight of nearly 200 divine swords was truly spectacular. In the present age there were not many people who liked to use so many swords. Most importantly, he could tell at a glance that Zhou Xuanji only had 10th Revolution Golden Immortal cultivation. "Divine Cliff Zhou Xuanji." Zhou Xuanji replied. Immediately 50 legendary swords rose up, each giving off a powerful light as they spun around him at high speed. There was no pattern to them at all, and they were as wild as the wind. Sword Sect Immortal Ghost Weep. With the support of Heavenly Law Immortal Energy, Zhou Xuanji's speed greatly increased, and he quickly came before Tang Juetian and Lu Tingjun. 50 divine swords attacked them fiercely, catching them off guard. Tang Juetian immediately took out his great emperor's divine weapon. It was a large blade that was wrapped in raging flames. The blade took up a third of the entire blade, and there was a dragon's head at the tip of the blade, looking incredibly domineering. He slashed out with his saber, and the saber chi that was like a violent storm deflected more than 20 divine swords. Lu Tingjun was forced into a passive position. This scene frightened the spectators. As soon as Zhou Xuanji appeared, he suppressed Tang Juetian and Lu Tingjun. Some cultivators with high cultivation bases were dumbfounded. A 10th Revolution Golden Immortal was this powerful? As expected of a Grade 1 Great Emperor. It seems like the rumors are true? Too strong. Crossing realms to fight and 1 against 2. Between him and Emperor Jundao, who is stronger? How does he control so many swords? It feels like every sword's trajectory is different. They are all so strong. The cultivators began to discuss among themselves in shock. Emperor Yin of Zhou's expression was complicated. It had only been a few decades and Zhou Xuanji had already reached such a level. If he had protected Lady Zhao Xian and her son back then, his current situation would be completely different. Lady Zhao Xian's beautiful face appeared in his mind. He then thought of the great Zhou's empress. In the end, even though he had ascended, he had not left anyone behind. There was only boundless loneliness accompanying him. Zhou Xuanji used Sword Sect Immortal Ghost Weep and quickly injured Lu Tingjun. However, Tang Juetian was not injured at all. He stared at the great emperor's divine weapon in Tang Juetian's hand and inwardly felt quite shocked. He could sense danger coming from that great emperor's divine weapon. If he was not careful, that divine weapon could fatally attack him. As for Lu Tingjun, he did not place him in his eyes at all. He did not know how strong Void Extreme Immortals were, but the two people in front of him were at least above average Void Extreme Immortals. It had to be said that Heavenly Law Immortal Energy and Armageddon Grade Swords were indeed powerful. He felt much more confident and started to try to condense the 9 sword souls. Using 2 domineering divine abilities at the same time would be a great challenge to his soul's endurance. He had always tried and had succeeded before, but it was not stable enough. In battle, he could always challenge his limits. After each battle, he would become stronger because of this method of challenging his limits. It was just like training. Muscles used up a lot of energy, but after resting they would become stronger. Clang. The 2 Armageddon grade swords slashed against the saber, giving off countless sparks. Tang Juetian was more powerful than Zhou Xuanji, but Zhou Xuanji had Heavenly Law Immortal Energy, so he was not at a disadvantage at all. Lu Tingjun was blocked by the 20 swords and could not get close to Zhou Xuanji at all. He did not dodge. Under everyone's gazes, he had to gain face for himself and could not bring shame to the great Heaven God dynasty. Tang Juetian started to fight with his full strength. The great emperor's divine weapon gave off a domineering aura, forcing Zhou Xuanji back with a saber strike. The 9 sword souls behind Zhou Xuanji continuously slashed out. Sword light flashed, but they were all blocked by Tang Juetian. Zhou Xuanji, you're indeed incredible. But don't think about defeating me. Tang Juetian wildly laughed. He looked very domineering, but he was inwardly panicking. If he was defeated by a 10th Revolution Golden Immortal, he would lose a lot of face. Even if he returned to the clan, the elders would still punish him. Just thinking about it was terrifying. Zhou Xuanji's gaze became serious, and the other legendary swords also joined Sword Sect Immortal Weep. Close to 200 light swords crazily revolved around his body, and as soon as Tang Juetian got close, he was surrounded and attacked. The scene was incomparably spectacular, and the spectators felt their blood boil. Only the people from the Heavenly Palace had mixed feelings. They had watched Zhou Xuanji grow. Once upon a time, Zhou Xuanji was just an ordinary person in their eyes. Now they could only look up. Emperor Yan of Zhou remained silent, his emotions complicated. In the distance, Wuxia and Lan Shangying were dumbfounded. How can he be so strong? Wuxia gulped and asked with a trembling voice. He did not expect Zhou Xuanji to be more powerful than him, and not just by a little bit. Lan Shangying didn't reply. She was also feeling very complicated. Back when he had gone to capture Shi Shinzong, Zhou Xuanji had not been very strong. How long had it been? Was this the talent of a first-class great emperor? Lu Tingjun completely gave up on close combat and cast divine abilities and spells from afar. His attacks were like a vast ocean that flowed endlessly, wave after wave. Zhou Xuanji relied on Sword Sect Immortal Weep to defend against his attacks, and at the same time he resisted Tang Juetian. Tang Juetian and Lu Tingjun did not realize that they had unknowingly teamed up. If it was in the past, they would definitely scoff. However, Zhou Xuanji's name was too great and his aura was too powerful, so they had no choice but to work together. In the spectators' eyes, Zhou Xuanji's aura and image were already superior to the other two. Is that all you have? Zhou Xuanji said as he coldly laughed. The World Full Sword was activated, causing Tang Juetian and Lu Tingjuan's expressions to change. Chapter 455. Ignorant child. Don't be so arrogant. Tang Juetian coldly harumphed, his shoulders trembled, and flames started to burn on the surface of his body, causing his aura to explode. He wildly swung his saber 18 times at Zhou Xuanji. Saber light flashed, each strike stronger than the one before. The sea of clouds was slashed apart, and the ground below directly collapsed. Zhou Xuanji frowned and instinctively used the Holy Light Divine Shadow Sword and all evil yin-yang destruction to block in front of him. There was a loud bang. Zhou Xuanji was sent flying backward. His qi and blood surged up to his throat and he almost spat it out. He endured the discomfort and swallowed the blood. Tang Juetian charged over once again. 18 blades of madness. It was a peerless saber technique that he had created himself. This saber technique has been recorded in the Tang King clan's library for future generations to learn. This was Tang Juetian's strongest attack. Under his domineering saber qi, Zhou Xuanji was pushed back. Lu Tingjun stopped and frowned as he looked at Tang Juetian. The terrifying might of the emperor's divine weapon caused his heart to palpitate, and he knew that he really wasn't Tang Juetian's match. On the other hand, although Zhou Xuanji was being suppressed, he had not lost yet. He was still resisting. Tiske, the Tang King clan also has such a genius, there's finally no need to find a son-in-law. Haha, Emperor Zhao, aren't you afraid of angering War God Xiling? War God Xiling is indeed powerful. He's probably no weaker than Taichu Yudao now. It's a pity for Taichu Yudao. He could have been even stronger and even fought against the heavenly saints. How is little brother Zhou going to win? The 9 souls chatted happily in Zhou Xuanji's mind without any pressure. Even though it would be very difficult for Zhou Xuanji to defeat Tang Juetian could forget about killing him. There was a lot of heavenly law celestial power in the Tianxia map. It was more than enough to fight against Tang Juetian. Even though Tang Juetian's cultivation was higher than Zhou Xuanji's, using 18 berserk blades of extinction took a great toll on him. Zhou Xuanji immediately unleashed Emperor's Wei Thousand Hand Sword Buddha. A 30,000-meter tall golden Buddha rose from the ground, its surface giving off a faint silver light. Its 1,000 hands stretched out, directly swinging their swords towards Tang Juetian. The Emperor's Wei Thousand Hand Sword Buddha, formed from heavenly law celestial power, was incredibly powerful. Tang Juetian was instantly suppressed and could only passively defend. Damn it! What is this? Tang Juetian's eyes widened, his face filled with shock. Lu Tingjuan's entire body was trembling and he felt powerless. Too strong. Zhou Xuanji stood at the top of the Buddha's head and looked down at Tang Juetian. Seeing Tang Juetian bitterly struggling, he felt quite delighted. It was this feeling of power. Previously, when he faced malicious Buddha and Shandaoya, he felt immense pressure and even doubted himself. Now, it felt so good. Tang Juetian, on the other hand, felt extremely sullen. Being suppressed by a 10th Revolution Golden Immortal, even Zhou Xuanji felt quite sullen. After all, he was also a genius. Between geniuses there was no such thing as submission. The ground collapsed in succession, trees were swept away and mountains were shattered. Everything was like a scene of the end of the world, and it forced the other spectators to dodge. Wuxia became excited and said excitedly, "Amazing! He might really win." At this moment he had already forgotten about everything else and only hoped that Zhou Xuanji could win. If they could defeat both Tang Juetian and Lu Tingjun at the same time, the Divine Cliff's prestige would definitely soar. In the future, many people might join the Divine Cliff because of Zhou Xuanji. For the Divine Cliff, which had suffered great losses, it was of utmost importance. In the distance, an old beggar lay on a cliff as he watched the battle. It was Di Guanlong's teacher. Back when he had met Zhou Xuanji, he had wanted to take Zhou Xuanji as his disciple. He looked quite satisfied and continuously nodded as he smiled and said, "Not bad, not bad. No wonder the demonic emperor and great emperor Dao Court want him. Now that they don't dare to enter the Center God province, this boy is mine. A first-class great emperor. Even though I have a first-class great emperor disciple, I haven't nurtured one in a long time." The smile on his face became vulgar and he almost drooled. Tang Juetian quickly adapted to the 1,000-hand sword Buddha's attacks. He began to fly up and prepare to counterattack. Zhou Xuanji frowned. This boy was so difficult to deal with. Use the World Overlord technique to absorb heavenly law celestial energy and circulate Emperor's might to gain the acknowledgement of the heavenly law. A chuckle sounded into Zhou Xuanji's ears, causing his expression to change. Who was talking? He did not have time to think and immediately did as he was told. The Emperor's might of a first-class great emperor exploded out, causing Tang Juetian to feel some pressure. However, with his cultivation he could still endure it. Traces of formless heavenly law celestial energy descended and entered Zhou Xuanji's body, causing the heavenly law celestial energy in his body to become more and more powerful. Zhou Xuanji seemed to come into contact with something. The pressure on Tang Juetian increased and he was once again suppressed. The 1,000-hand sword Buddha did not have any sword techniques, and it just randomly slashed out, making it so that Tang Juetian could not find any openings and could only randomly defend. Zhou Xuanji sank into a mysterious state. He felt as if his soul had come to the heavens, and he ignored everything else in the world. Tang Juetian wanted to pull away and fight, but Zhou Xuanji instinctively used universal attraction, making it impossible for him to escape. Lu Tingjun was completely reduced to a spectator. He sighed, looking quite dispirited. Boom. Tang Juetian finally could not hold on any longer and was blasted down, falling into the ruins. Zhou Xuanji came back to his senses, and seeing that Tang Juetian had been defeated, he came back to his senses. That feeling just then, he felt quite excited. He had never thought that the world Buddha art and emperor's might could help him cultivate. As Tang Juetian was defeated, the heavens and earth gradually calmed down. Zhou Xuanji did not follow up with another attack. This was a challenge, not a battle to the death. He looked at Lu Tingjun, using his eyes to ask him if he wanted to continue. Lu Tingjun cupped his fists towards him before turning and leaving. He was willing to concede defeat. The spectators all felt incredibly excited. Heavens! Is a 10th Revolution Golden Immortal really this powerful? Too powerful, no wonder the Divine Cliff was destroyed because of him. Tang Juetian was defeated just like that. He won in a very domineering manner without any tricks. He didn't kill Tang Juetian, that's admirable. The cultivators were all convinced by Zhou Xuanji, and the heavenly palace's people stealthily left. Emperor Yan of Zhou did not stay. He did not have the face to face Zhou Xuanji. After the dust settled, Tang Juetian, who was lying in the ruins, breathed raggedly. He did not even have the strength to stand up. Swish! The Holy Light Redemption sword descended and stabbed into his shoulder, causing him to become furious. In the next second his expression froze. He could sense that his injuries were recovering. This sword, Zhou Xuanji descended and stopped in the air, less than 30 meters away from him. "You're very strong," Zhou Xuanji praised, causing Tang Juetian's mood to become better. "However, you're not as strong as me." Tang Juetian coughed and blood flowed out of his mouth. After healing Tang Juetian for a while, Zhou Xuanji took his sword and left. Tang Juetian sat up and looked at him with a complicated expression. News of today's battle would definitely spread throughout the Center God province. However, he wholeheartedly accepted his loss. This boy was so strong. Zhou Xuanji put away his sword and flew towards Wuxia and Zhou Xuanji. However, on the way he suddenly disappeared. He opened his eyes again. He found that he had appeared in a forest, and he instinctively became wary. He looked ahead and saw an old beggar lying under a tree, looking somewhat familiar. Chapter 456. What do you want? Zhou Xuanji asked in a low voice, his gaze locked onto the old beggar. Hearing this, the old beggar lay on the grass, scratched his butt and said with a smile, "Of course I want to take you as my disciple. Have you forgotten our last meeting?" Zhou Xuanji snorted coldly, "I'm not interested." Although the old beggar was very strong, he didn't like having an elder above him. The old beggar stood up and said seriously, "I can help you surpass the malicious Buddha and the demonic emperor." Zhou Xuanji rolled his eyes and said, "I can anyway." The old beggar was so angry that he stood up with his hands on his hips and scolded, "You are becoming stronger, but so are they. When can you catch up with them?" Zhou Xuanji fell silent. He understood the logic, but he did not want to take him as his teacher. Moreover, this person didn't look like a decent person, and he looked even more unreliable than Daoya old man. If he wanted to be apprenticed to someone like the old immortal, it should be someone who was unfathomable and calm. The old beggar seemed to see the doubt in his heart. He rolled his eyes and suddenly had an idea. "Do you think I'm unreliable? Let me tell you, Taichu Yudao is just a junior in front of me. Back then, if it wasn't for me, the demonic emperor would have died a long time ago. Malicious Buddha once knelt before me." The old beggar started boasting and Zhou Xuanji almost believed him. He could not help but say, "Just say that you are the heavenly saint who appeared out of nowhere." The old beggar was silent. He suddenly showed a sad expression. Zhou Xuanji's heart skipped a beat and he said unpleasantly, "Don't tell me that I found out." The old beggar shook his head and said, "I am not him, but he was once of the same generation as me. Do you believe me?" Zhou Xuanji looked at him deeply and asked, "Since you want to take me in so much, why didn't you protect the divine cliff back then? I don't need a master now." He had many ways to become stronger, so why would he need another master? "I was busy back then. Didn't you see that I brought your senior brother Di Guanlong with me? That brat doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. He first challenged Han Shuzi, then Taichu Yudao. He's now challenging experts all over the world." The old beggar sighed with a very sad tone. But Zhou Xuanji could only hear the aura of arrogance. Zhou Xuanji's heart began to waver. He said hesitantly, "How do I know if you have other motives? Shen Daoya even said that he wanted to be my backer." The old beggar was so angry that he laughed. He walked around him and said, "Kid, you're scared, aren't you? You don't even dare to grasp the opportunity when it's in your hands. Do you know how many people are crying and begging me to be their teacher? There's one in the great Emperor Dao court who is my disciple, and he beat Shen Daoya up. One of my crazy apprentices obtained one of the holy swords you sought. Next time I'll help you get it back. Di Guanlong is very strong, right? Among my subordinates he's the weakest." "No, you're the weakest." Zhou Xuanji was so scared that he hesitated. The old beggar continued to praise his disciple. Zhou Xuanji suddenly took out the ancient god sword. He pretended to be on guard, but he was actually communicating with the 9 souls. How could it be him? "Get away from him!" Demon Lord Ryuan exclaimed. "This is a heavenly opportunity, quickly take him as your master." Emperor Songhai said excitedly. The 2 souls' words clashed, causing Zhou Xuanji to feel quite stunned. Lu Wuji followed and said, "This person's name cannot be directly said in the Great Thousand World, or you will incur the wrath of the heavens. Even though he's unreliable, his ability to teach disciples is unparalleled." Emperor Zhao said, "You're praising him like that, could it be that you're also his disciple?" Lu Wuji did not reply. Hearing the soul's words, Zhou Xuanji came to a conclusion in his heart. The old beggar was truly strong and he was not boasting. He said, "How about this, you teach me and I'll repay you in the future. As for taking you as my master," the old beggar glared at him and shouted, "How can you skip the ceremony of taking me as your master?" A massive might descended, causing Zhou Xuanji's expression to fall. His right leg weakened and he half knelt down. He looked at the old beggar in terror. What a terrifying might. He was unable to resist at all. However, the old beggar left him a trace of dignity and did not make him kneel down. "From today onwards you are my disciple. As long as you don't seek death and provoke the old monsters above the 33rd heaven, anyone who is more senior than you will not be able to harm you. Of course, if an opponent from this era defeats you or wants to kill you, I will not act, the old beggar said in high spirits. He raised his head and puffed out his chest as he domineeringly waved his hand and said, "To become my disciple, you must defeat everyone in your generation. Otherwise, your death will not be regretted. Di Guanlong has already walked on this path, you're next." Zhou Xuanji stood up and asked, "So according to what you're saying in the future, we disciples will have to kill each other to decide who is the most powerful?" He felt that there was a conspiracy. The old beggar rolled his eyes and said grumpily, "I'll nurture you all and then have you all die. Do you have nothing better to do?" Zhou Xuanji felt completely at ease. The old beggar said, "I'll mark you first so that you won't be killed by the senior apprentice brothers." After saying this, he walked over to Zhou Xuanji and slapped his palm against Zhou Xuanji's chest. In the next second, a picture of a phoenix spreading its wings appeared on Zhou Xuanji's face. Why is there a palm print on your body?" "Wait." The old beggar cried out in shock. Zhou Xuanji felt quite confused. "Wait." Zhou Xuanji looked furious and roared, "Back then, the person who ambushed me in the yin-yang boundary was you?" Back then he had almost been killed. The old beggar's expression was strange as he said awkwardly, "So that boy was you. What a coincidence." Zhou Xuanji grabbed his neck and said furiously, "You almost killed me. Why are you still pretending? Is your memory that bad?" The old beggar smiled awkwardly and did not know how to explain. He faked a cough and said, "In the future, when you senior apprentice brothers meet, the mark will appear. Alright, you can go back now." After saying this, he turned and left. Zhou Xuanji felt quite startled. "What? You're not going to teach me anything?" He held back his anger and reminded the old beggar. The old beggar waved his hand without looking back and said, "Didn't I teach you a little before? I'll go and get some treasures for you. Wait for me at the Divine Cliff." As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared on the spot. Zhou Xuanji was speechless. He did not know if this was a good thing or a bad thing. He did not think too much about it and left to search for Wuxia and Zhou Xuanji. In a pale white space, 16 shadows appeared one after another. They were of different shapes and sizes and they circled around each other. Revered teacher took in another disciple. A tall and sturdy black figure said. The other shadows also spoke. Could it be that Emperor Jundao? It could also be Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji? It's best not to. I still want to send my disciple to challenge him. If it's Zhou Xuanji, it will be fun. Tisk Tiske, that old man still dares to run around. Isn't he afraid of being hunted down by the immortal gods? The shadows started chatting. Some were gloating, some were furious, and some were disdainful. There were all kinds of attitudes. The only female shadow said, that old and scrupulous man wanted to take Zhou Xuanji as his disciple before. Why did he wait until now? Is he hiding something from us? With this, all the shadows fell silent. Mobile version of the fastest updated website, M. Chapter 457. After parting with the old beggar, Zhou Xuanji quickly found Wu Qiu and Lan Xiangying. The two of them curiously asked him where he had gone, and he did not hide it. In any case, he didn't know the old beggar's name. Lan Xiangying muttered, that person is Di Guanlong's master. He probably has an extraordinary status. Wu Qiu felt envious, but he was very rational. He said, it's best not to spread this matter. Recently, Di Guanlong has been challenging people everywhere, and the world is in an uproar. Who knows how many enemies he has provoked? Those people can't beat him and they might come to make trouble for you. Zhou Xuanji nodded. In actuality, he really wanted some trouble to see if the old beggar was boasting. But he quickly threw this thought to the back of his mind. I can't surf. The three of them returned home. Even though he had not found the Saint Sword this time, Zhou Xuanji had defeated Tang Juetian and Lu Tingjun, bringing glory to the Divine Cliff. Both of them were from Overlord-class forces. Together with Zhou Xuanji's powerful backer, the Divine Cliff's future became bright again. In the next half a month, news of Zhou Xuanji defeating Tang Juetian and Lu Tingjun quickly spread throughout the Center God province. Zhou Xuanji was a first-class great emperor to begin with. This time he was a genius who defeated two Void Extreme Immortals, and many people started to promote him. Who was stronger between Zhou Xuanji and Emperor Jundao? If the two first-grade great sovereigns were to fight, both sides would definitely suffer. This was a scene that the other righteous sects would be happy to see. As righteous sects, they could not make trouble for Zhou Xuanji and Emperor Jundao for no reason. He could only incite public opinion and plot against the world. Within the mountain peaks, Baihao Yisin and Feng Qiu were currently cultivating, and there were 300 meters between them. The muscular man suddenly descended and stood in front of Baihao Yisin, causing the ground to tremble. Baihao Yisin did not open his eyes and asked, "What is it?" Seeing him, the muscular man was infuriated. He kicked Zhou Xuanji and cursed, "From today onwards, you don't need to target Zhou Xuanji anymore." Baihao Yisin crawled up from the ground. He was first furious, then delighted. He asked in surprise, "Why?" Previously, the muscular man forced him to cultivate and mention Zhou Xuanji frequently. Otherwise, now that Baihao Yisin had formed an alliance with Zhou Xuanji, he would hate Zhou Xuanji to death. "Because he became your martial uncle," the burly man said angrily and disappeared on the spot. Baihao Yisin was stunned. What the hell? Not too far away, Feng Qiu's eyes widened as he pounded the ground in anger. How hateful. I should have grabbed hold of Zhou Xuanji back then. When Zhou Xuanji and the others returned to the Divine Cliff, it had already been 2 months since the battle at the Nether Demon Stream. The Divine Cliff welcomed an esteemed guest. It was Bai Suwen's father, Bai Yanqiong. Bai Yanqiong was a true god of the Nine-Heaven Divine Snake clan and was extremely powerful. In the current Divine Cliff, there was no one who could compare to Bai Yanqiong. Under Yang Yutian's guidance, he came to Zhou Xuanji's residence. Seeing Bai Yanqiong, Bai Suwen shot into his embrace like an arrow. Bai Yanqiong was tall and had a head of white hair. He looked incredibly domineering and mighty, but seeing his daughter, he gave a kind smile. Xiao Chan walked out and looked at Bai Yanqiong curiously. Yang Yutian smiled and asked, "Where's Xuanji? Senior Bai still wants to see him." Xiao Chan pointed at the sky and said, "He's still cultivating." Yang Yutian felt quite surprised. He could not sense Zhou Xuanji's aura. Was this boy's cultivation that ridiculous? Bai Yanqiong looked over and gave a deep smile as he said, "Good boy." A ray of sword light suddenly descended. It was Zhou Xuanji. He stood in front of Xiao Chan and nodded to Yang Yutian before looking at Bai Yanqiong and saying, "Your daughter is very kind. She helped me ascend a lot." Facing Bai Yanqiong, he was neither servile nor overbearing, but his words were very sincere. Even though he had not needed Bai Suwen's help back then, her kindness had moved him. Bai Yanqiong smiled and said, "Of course my daughter is good. I'll have to trouble you to take care of her in the future." Zhou Xuanji nodded and was immediately stunned. What was this? Bai Suwen was incredibly excited and quickly flew over to Zhou Xuanji's shoulder. Zhou Xuanji frowned and asked, "She hasn't taken human form yet. Are you willing to let her continue to follow me?" Bai Yanqiong replied, "When the two of you ascended, you already formed a bloodline contract. This is the Nine-Heaven Divine Snake's innate divine ability. She will support your karmic luck and so will you. From today onwards the two of you will be connected. You will prosper and you will suffer." Zhou Xuanji fell into chaos. "Hee, then I'll stay by little Xuanji's side. Daddy, in the future not only do you have to protect me but you also have to protect him," Bai Suwen said as she spat out her tongue. Chapter 458. Bai Yanqiong wanted to talk to Zhou Xuanji alone, so the two of them left Divine Cliff City and came to a dense fog, landing on a mountain peak. They stood side by side looking into the distance. They were silent for a while. Bai Yanqiong broke the silence and laughed loudly. "Not bad. When I sensed that someone had formed a bloodline contract with my daughter, I was furious. However, when I learned that it was you, I was pleasantly surprised." Even in the current Nine-Heaven Divine Snake clan, there wasn't a single first-grade Great Emperor. He did not feel any pressure handing Bai Suwen over to Zhou Xuanji, and the elders in his clan would not say anything. Zhou Xuanji did not know what to say. Why did it feel like he was marrying off his daughter? He did not have that kind of feelings for Bai Suwen. He only treated her as a pet. Of course he couldn't say this out loud. He changed the topic and asked, "Where is the Nine-Heaven Divine Snake clan? I rarely hear about your deeds in the Center God Province." The Nine-Heaven Divine Snake clan had always been a legend of the Center God Province, and could even be said to be a legend of the Great Thousand Domains. Bai Yanqiong smiled and said, "Above the 10th heaven, if you have the chance you can come to my race as a guest. Your fame has already spread throughout the race and many people wish to meet you." Zhou Xuanji nodded calmly, feeling pleased in his heart. He had already reached the level where everyone in the world knew of him. The immortal God has already created the divine palace in the 9th layer of heaven. Soon, the various forces in the Center God province will be summoned by the immortal God. Also, you must attend the heavenly saint's sermon. If possible, it would be best if you could get an official position in the divine palace. Bai Yanxiong glanced at him and reminded him meaningfully. Divine palace? Zhou Xuanji thought about it. Previously he was still wondering why the immortals and gods did not appear. It turned out that they were busy building the divine palaces. He didn't know if this so-called divine palace was similar to the heavenly court in Chinese mythology. Following this, Bai Yanxiong and Zhou Xuanji chatted about everything, occasionally discussing the heroes of the world. During this period, Zhou Xuanji brought up the 18 divine swords. Bai Yanxiong immediately agreed, promising to help him find the 18 holy swords. 2 hours later, the two of them finally returned to the mansion. Bai Yanxiong said a few words to Bai Suwen before leaving. Zhou Xuanji stood in front of the gate and thought to himself, great ups and downs? Your luck changed? Before, he had been suppressed by the great Emperor Dao Court and the demonic emperor to the point that he had been unable to breathe. After the birth of the heavenly saint, he had a powerful backer and was favored by the 9 heaven divine snake clan. Now he could finally be like the geniuses of the other major forces and display his brilliance without fear. He could even secretly take the northern wilderness region under the control of the divine cliff. He began to miss his wife and daughter, especially Jiang Shui. This was the first time he had not seen her for such a long time. This girl must be thinking of him too. He smiled faintly and leaped into the sea of clouds to continue cultivating. In the past 6 months, he had discovered a way to cultivate without being discovered by others. It was very dangerous to absorb the celestial power of the heavenly law in the sky. He used the celestial power of the heavenly law to wrap himself up and hide his figure and aura, becoming one with heaven and earth. Even Yang Yuqian, who was a true god, did not notice his existence due to his carelessness. If he could use this state in battle, it would definitely become a killing technique. However, in order to enter this state, one needed time to calm their mind and focus. Trying to achieve it in battle was tantamount to courting death. Above the mysterious tribulation crater, the Dao Heaven sect was like before, like an eternal kingdom in the sky. A figure stood on a cliff at the edge of the mysterious tribulation crater, looking up at the Dao Heaven sect. He was wearing a black robe with python patterns on it and had a dragon crown on his head. His figure was tall and straight, and his eyes were cold and filled with veins of blood. Looking at the sky, he gave a cruel smile. Taichu Yudao, I didn't think you'd already become so old. You've let down your cultivation. You've let down your cultivation, he muttered to himself as he walked towards the sky. A towering killing intent exploded out like a blood-red tornado, sweeping up dust and sand and scattering the sea of clouds. A massacre was about to unfold. The second month after Bai Yanxiong left, Zhou Xuanji returned to his residence to rest, and Fei Hai came to find him. Senior, Shi Shinzong has already won the 100 Swords Martial Gathering and obtained the Heaven and Earth Sword Embryo. Sword Sovereign Gu greatly praises him and even asked Shi Shinzong to stay and receive his teachings, Fei Hai said excitedly. Even though Shi Shinzong was not at the Divine Cliff, he believed that Shi Shinzong would come back. The Hegemon Sword Emperor could not keep the Sword Saint. Zhou Xuanji knew about the 100 Swords Martial Gathering, and Sword Sovereign Gu was the most powerful sword cultivator in the Center God Province. The Heaven and Earth Sword Embryo could be used to forge a Rui legendary sword, which could only be used by him. He was not interested in the Heaven and Earth Sword Embryo. After all, he had the supreme legendary sword system. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, it's not bad for him to have this opportunity. However, it's impossible for him to catch up to me. Fei Hai nodded. He did not doubt this at all. Do you know where Xian Xianghua is? Zhou Xuanji asked. After ascending for so long, he had not received any news about Xian Xianghua. The more time passed, the more worried he became. Fei Hai shook his head, and Zhou Xuanji could only give up. That day, a piece of news spread to the Divine Cliff City, causing the entire city to explode. The Dao Heaven sect had been slaughtered. Taichu Yudao had died in a seated posture in a Taoist temple, his body petrified. When Zhou Xuanji heard about this, he felt quite confused. In his eyes, Taichu Yudao was an incredibly powerful existence, and he had once been the most powerful expert in the Center God Province. He had died just like that? He quickly came to the Cliff Lord's palace. Yang Yuqian, a group of elders and core disciples were all there with serious expressions. The Divine Cliff had a good relationship with the Dao Heaven sect, and they had both been attacked by malicious Buddha. Now that the Tao Heaven sect had been slaughtered, would the divine cliff follow in their footsteps? Yang Yuqian's expression was the most unsightly. As the cliff lord, he felt the greatest pressure. Seeing Zhou Xuanji come in, the tense atmosphere did not ease. Zhou Xuanji asked, "How long has it been since the Tao Heaven sect was slaughtered?" Wuxia replied, "Half a month." Zhou Xuanji frowned and asked, "Why did it take so long for news to spread?" Wuxia explained that no one from the Tao Heaven sect had survived, and it was only discovered when a cultivator visited the Tao Heaven sect. In other words, this battle did not cause too much of a commotion. The Tao Heaven sect's enemy was unimaginably powerful. The palace fell into deathly silence and no one spoke. Don't think about it. After Han Shuzi died, no one in the Divine Cliff is worth him attacking. Just focus on developing. The Divine Cliff is only a second-rate faction now. A condescending laugh sounded throughout the palace, causing everyone's expressions to fall. Zhou Xuanji's expression became strange. "Cheap teacher?" The old beggar appeared beside him and put his hand on his shoulder as he chuckled and said, "Disciple, did you miss your teacher?" "Disciple?" Everyone stared with wide eyes and strange expressions. Zhou Xuanji sighed and introduced the old beggar to everyone. Hearing that the old beggar was Di Guanlong's teacher, everyone became excited. Yang Yuqian hurriedly asked, "Senior, who was the person who destroyed the Tao Heaven sect?" The Tao Heaven sect was one of the top existences in the Center God province, and it had been destroyed just like that. This was simply too shocking. The old beggar shrugged and smiled as he said, "That person disappeared 500,000 years ago and died 150,000 years ago. He was buried by his sworn brother, Emperor Xia." Chapter 459. That person was once the most outstanding genius of the Center God province. He was in the same situation as this disciple of mine, being suppressed by various forces and suffering unspeakably. Fortunately, he persevered and rose in the end. He naturally wanted revenge. Back then, Taichi Yudao had suppressed him. Everyone in the hall widened their eyes. They had not expected Taichi Yudao to have such a past. In their impression, Taichi Yudao was unfathomable, kind, and benevolent. He had actually suppressed geniuses before. They could not help but look at Zhou Xuanji, feeling a chill in their hearts. Fortunately, Zhou Xuanji was one of them. Zhou Xuanji felt quite speechless. "Why are you looking at me? It's not like I slaughtered the Tao Heaven sect." Yang Yuqian asked, "In other words, our divine cliff is not in danger?" The old beggar nodded before pulling Zhou Xuanji and preparing to leave. Zhou Xuanji asked curiously, "What's that person's name? Why haven't you told me?" The old beggar whispered, "Mo Jiuqing Shu, he is also my disciple." Zhou Xuanji's face twitched. The others heard it too and their expressions became strange. The terrifying expert who slaughtered the entire Tao Heaven sect was his disciple? Adding on Di Guanlong and Zhou Xuanji, just how many disciples did that fellow have? The two of them quickly left the Cliff Master Hall. The pressure on the others also disappeared instantly. Elder Yu Quan smiled and said, "Our divine cliff has benefited from Brother Zhou's master." Yang Yuqian's emotions surged, and he began to look forward to a beautiful future. The other side. Zhou Xuanji and the old beggar left the Divine Cliff City and came to a forest in the distance. "Tell me about Mo Jiuqing first. How powerful is he? Isn't he afraid of angering the immortal gods by doing this?" Zhou Xuanji asked out of curiosity. He had mixed feelings. He had a good impression of Taichi Yudao. Taichi Yudao had even protected him. The old beggar shook his head and said, "I don't know how strong he is. That guy has already betrayed me. He is blinded by hatred, but you don't have to be afraid. He won't harm his fellow disciples. As for whether the immortal gods will find trouble with him, let them." He was not worried about Mo Jiuqing at all. Zhou Xuanji thought to himself. He wondered how many disciples this guy had. The old beggar smiled and said, "From today onwards I will teach you a divine ability. I will only leave after you have learned it. What I will teach you in the future will depend on my mood." "Divine ability? What divine ability?" Zhou Xuanji asked. The old beggar raised his finger and touched his forehead. Boom. A huge wave of memory surged into his mind, and it felt like the supreme legendary sword system's divine ability. After a while, he opened his eyes, a look of amazement on his face. The old beggar sat under a tree not far away, crossed his legs and said with a smug smile, "Am I very strong?" Zhou Xuanji nodded and took a deep breath. This thaumaturgy was called Evil Spirit Retribution. When he used this divine ability on his enemies, all the attacks he made within the time limit would suddenly descend on the enemy after a period of time. This divine ability was simply terrifying. It didn't make any sense. He looked up at the old beggar and asked curiously, "Did you create this magical power? How did you create it?" There was no cultivation method for evil spirit retribution. Just now, when the old beggar gave him the inherited memory, he also passed him a strange energy. This kind of energy fused with his soul, allowing him to comprehend this divine ability directly. However, it would take a long time to familiarize himself with this ability. "Nonsense, how can you imagine my creativity? Don't ask, I'm just that strong," the old beggar said proudly with a smile that deserved a beating. Zhou Xuanji asked further, "Do all your disciples know evil spirit retribution? What if he became enemies with other disciples one day?" This divine ability was too ridiculous and impossible to defend against. The old beggar shook his head and said, "Other than you, only one person knows it. It's a pity that guy disappointed me too much. He's probably thinking about killing me every day now." Zhou Xuanji was speechless. "Thinking about killing you? How did you teach your disciples?" He remembered that Di Guanlong was also very impatient with the old beggar. But it was true. This guy's character was too jumpy and annoying. After that, Zhou Xuanji began practicing evil spirit retribution. In the beginning he could only cast it for half a second, and the explosive time was 3 seconds later. It was far from enough. According to the inherited memory, if he reached great accomplishment, he would be able to control time as he pleased. He could even cast the divine ability in advance and attack the air for 2 hours. After that, he would look for an enemy and attack again, unleashing the attack that he had used for 2 hours. Most importantly, this attack would definitely hit the enemy, and the enemy could not dodge it and could only block it head-on. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became. If he could reach great accomplishment with evil spirit retribution, his strength would greatly increase. When that time came, he could use the Furious Ape Sword to store up energy for 100 years and use evil spirit retribution against an enemy. When the sword chi shot out, even if the enemy blocked it, after a while the 100 years of sword chi would appear again. He could not understand how a divine ability like this could exist. The old beggar gave a pleased smile and said, "I've created many powerful divine abilities. Evil spirit retribution isn't the most powerful. Treat me well in the future, and I'll consider whether or not to teach it to you." Zhou Xuanji ignored him and focused on cultivating. 3 months after the Dao Heaven sect was destroyed, the Tang King clan was attacked by Mo Jiuqing. War God Xiling and many of the Tang King clan's ancestors attacked, and in the end, more than half of the clan was killed. War God Xiling was heavily injured, and that battle shook the heavens and the earth. If it wasn't for the immortal gods, the Tang King clan might have been massacred. This news once again shook the world. Mo Jiuqing's name also spread, and all sorts of things about him were dug up. He had been a top-tier expert 500,000 years ago. Before that, he had been the #1 genius and a first-class great emperor. He had been suppressed by various factions, and he had become the disciple of a mysterious teacher. He had risen up, and he had fought with the heroes of the world before mysteriously disappearing. From then on, his name had become taboo, and the various factions had tried to cover up this shameful past. This made everyone think of Zhou Xuanji. How similar was Zhou Xuanji's experience to Mo Jiuqing's? In just an instant, while everyone feared Mo Jiuqing, a storm of discussion erupted. If a genius was suppressed by the heroes of the world, what would they do? This sort of thing was not uncommon, but Mo Jiuqing was simply too terrifying. In less than half a year, he had destroyed 2 overlord-level factions. Within a mountain range, Baihao Yisun and Feng Qiu sat in front of the well-built man, dumbfounded. "Revered teacher, you have such a ridiculously powerful junior apprentice brother?" Baihao Yisun asked excitedly. Mo Jiuqing's performance had completely shocked him. Feng Qiu was also shocked. However, he felt even more unwillingness and regret. After all, Zhou Xuanji was from the same sect as Mo Jiuqing. The well-built man coldly harumphed and said, "I don't have a junior apprentice brother like him. He's blinded by hatred and is not worthy of being called an expert." Baihao Yisun said disdainfully, "Only those who are deeply in love can contend for the great Tao." His eyes burned with passion, and he suddenly wanted to see Mo Jiuqing. Having such a person as his martial uncle was simply too awesome. However, thinking about how Zhou Xuanji was also his martial uncle, his mood instantly plummeted. Chapter 460. Cultivate well. Don't be too happy. Mo Jiuqing's recklessness might draw the wrath of the immortal gods for us, the muscular man said as he stared at Bai Hao Yisan. The muscular man glared at Bai Hao Yisan. He loved and hated this disciple in front of him. Bai Hao Yisan was his most talented disciple, but he had a bad temper and was always sloppy. Although Bai Hao Yisan had already become a true god before he descended, to him, true god was not the end. But now, this brat was only a revolution golden immortal. Every time the muscular man saw him, he wanted to beat him to death. Revered teacher, don't worry. I will become more powerful soon, Bai Hao Yisan said unconcernedly. Bai Hao Yisan said unconcernedly. In his heart, cultivation was never the most important thing. No matter how hard he cultivated, he would always meet someone more powerful. Feng Gyul sensed the murderous aura and quickly pulled Bai Hao Yisan, signaling him to shut up. Bai Hao Yisan looked up and saw that the muscular man's face had already turned into a demon, and his murderous aura soared into the sky. He immediately shut his mouth, but his thoughts were on Mo Jiuqing. The storm of revenge that Mo Jiuqing stirred up made it difficult for the Center God Province to calm down. After the Dao Heaven sect and the Tang King clan, who would be the next faction? Previously, the immortal gods saving the Tang King clan caused a huge commotion. The immortal gods finally appeared. The Center God Province would welcome the era of immortal gods. But none of this had anything to do with Zhou Xuanji. He was still practicing evil spirit retribution in the forest near the Divine Cliff. The old beggar would occasionally sneak into the Divine Cliff City to steal good wine and food. Yang Yuqian knew that they were in the forest, so he ordered that no disciple should come close so that they would not disturb Zhou Xuanji and his disciple. Half a year later, Zhou Xuanji had great attainments in evil spirit retribution. He could cast it for 3 breaths of time, and the explosive effect was 10 breaths later. It seemed right, but it was enough to kill the enemy. The old beggar was very satisfied. He shook the wine flask and said with a smile, I like to teach geniuses. I took in an idiot before and he reduced my lifespan. How is that person now? Zhou Xuanji asked casually. He often heard the old beggar mention his other disciples, and each one was more powerful than the other, which made him suspicious. He's not in the Center God Province anymore. He went to another place to be a Buddha. The old beggar replied casually. Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji suddenly stopped and turned to look at him. Zhou Xuanji asked, Is it 9th Nether Buddha? He had heard of the 9th Nether Buddha in the Nether Realm. He was the strongest expert in the Nether Realm. The old beggar rolled his eyes at him and said snappily, 9th Nether Buddha? That's one of the supreme figures of creation, so how could he possibly be my disciple? The reason why the Netherworld has always been able to maintain peace and order without anyone disturbing it is precisely because of his strength. Your senior brother is still far from the 9th Nether Buddha, but if he were to be placed in the Center God Province, he would be invincible. Zhou Xuanji heard him and asked with squinted eyes, You mean that the Center God Province is not the most powerful province in the Great Thousand World? The Center God Province was big enough in his eyes, but he did not know how big the boundless universe was. That's only natural. The Center God Province is only located in the center of the Great Thousand World. In terms of strength, it can't be considered the peak. Many ancient experts are hiding in the wider world to concentrate on their cultivation. If all of them were to enter the Center God Province, the structure of the Center God Province would definitely be reshuffled. The old beggar said gloomily. Hearing this, Zhou Xuanji had even more questions to ask. He immediately waved his hand and said, Stop asking and focus on your cultivation. I'm bored out of my mind here. I want to go out and play quickly. Don't delay me. Zhou Xuanji snorted coldly and continued to cultivate evil spirit retribution. With the swine-culling sword in his hand, he hacked at a giant boulder. He did not use any magic energy and controlled his strength to prevent the boulder from shattering. A month later, the old beggar felt that he had mastered it, so he decided to leave. This bead is for you. This bead is not simple. I can't tell you what it is for now. You must carry it with you at all times and don't put it in your storage bag. The old beggar opened his right hand, and a red bead the size of a thumb appeared in his hand. It looked like a glass ball. Zhou Xuanji took the bead. Before he could ask, the old beggar disappeared into thin air and left. He looked at the red bead for a while but could not figure out what it was. So, he took out a special string and hung the bead around his neck. He did not continue to cultivate evil spirit retribution. The current evil spirit retribution was enough for him. He had to continue to increase his cultivation. Cultivation was the most important thing. After returning to his residence, he saw Xiao Chan and Bai Suwen cultivating together. Fei Hai was nowhere to be found, and the other servants were busy with their own tasks. He did not disturb anyone but went back to his room to pack up. After that, he flew into the sky and began to extract heavenly law celestial energy. 3 days later, a piece of news came to the divine cliff. Mo Jiuqing massacred the 8 Desolate Spirit sect. The 8 Desolate Spirit sect was one of the overlord-level factions. It was located in the west of the Center God province and controlled 23 mortal realms. It was extremely powerful.